The dimensional barrier shattered like glass. Dr. Stephen Strange tumbled through collapsing realities, his cloak of levitation struggling against forces that defied every law of mystical physics he'd spent years mastering. The Sanctum Sanctorum felt like a lifetime ago. He'd been tracking a dimensional anomaly when something vast and incomprehensibly ancient had reached across the void and pulled. Not with hands. With mathematics. With calculations that treated reality itself as a solvable equation. Then came impact. Strange crashed into a marketplace that shouldn't exist. Metal platforms suspended in a rotating cylinder. Neon advertisements in languages his translation spells couldn't immediately parse. Species he'd never encountered, humanoids with metallic carapaces, bipeds with 4 eyes, creatures in environmental suits, all recoiling as his arrival sent a shockwave of energy rippling outward. Kinetic barriers flared blue and shattered. Stalls collapsed. Something that looked like fruit exploded into bioluminescent pulp. He staggered upright, the eye of Agamotto cold against his chest. Wrong. Everything felt fundamentally wrong. The ambient energy he'd drawn upon for decades, the threads of dimensional power woven through reality, were absent. In their place, something else. A pervasive field he couldn't quite grasp, built on principles that shouldn't work yet clearly did. What the hell was that? Someone shouted in accented English. No, his mind translated automatically. Universal comprehension, at least, remained intact. Biotic surge off the charts. Another voice, this one clipped and military. But the signature's all wrong. Scanners can't classify it. Strange raised his hands instinctively, calling upon the crimson bands of Sidorak. The spell stuttered. Sparks of golden energy flickered and died, replaced by a disturbing blue glow that felt like it was coming from the environment itself rather than his will. He gritted his teeth and pushed harder, managing to form a crude shield as armed figures converged on his position. They carried weapons unlike anything from Earth, sleek rifles with glowing heat sinks, advanced enough to make Stark's technology look primitive. The rounds they fired weren't projectiles in any conventional sense. His hastily constructed barrier shuddered under impacts that behaved like relativistic mass accelerated to impossible velocities. Stand down, he commanded, trying again to open a portal. The sling ring sparked uselessly on his fingers. Whatever network of dimensional pathways he relied upon didn't exist here. He was trapped in a universe that operated on entirely different rules. A massive figure pushed through the crowd, 4 eyes blazing with anger, skin covered in intimidating armor. You just destroyed 3 weeks of merchandise, human. That's going to cost you. I don't have time for this. Strange swept his hand in an arc, attempting a mirror dimension gateway. The spell backfired spectacularly, sending him stumbling backward as feedback pain lanced through his neural pathways. His hands, his surgically ruined, mystically restored hands, spasmed with agony he hadn't felt in years. Then the gunfire stopped. A wave of genuine biotic power, that's what the locals called it, he realized, plucking the term from panicked thoughts around him, swept across the marketplace. Invisible force lifted the armed thugs off their feet and held them suspended in midair. Blue energy crackled around a single figure who walked calmly through the chaos. She was Asari, his newfound knowledge supplied. Blue-skinned, elegant, and radiating the kind of authority that didn't need to be spoken. Behind her, 2 Krogan enforcers, massive reptilian humanoids built like living tanks, leveled weapons that could probably punch through the sanctum's walls. Omega has one rule, the Asari said, her voice carrying effortlessly despite the screaming crowd. Don't fuck with Aria. She smiled, sharp and predatory. You just fucked with Aria. That means you fucked with Omega. I'm trying to decide if you're worth keeping alive. Strange met her gaze, recognizing a kindred spirit despite the circumstances. Someone used to power. Someone who ruled through competence and calculated intimidation. He'd dealt with worse, Dormammu, Thanos, entities that bent reality for entertainment. But right now, with his magic crippled and his connection to the mystical arts severed by whatever impossible physics governed this place, Dr. Stephen Strange realized he was more vulnerable than he'd been since his hands were shattered on a rain-slicked road. "My name is Stephen Strange," he said, keeping his voice level. "I'm not your enemy. I didn't choose to be here. Something pulled me through dimensional barriers, and I need to understand what, how, and why." Aria tilted her head, studying him with eyes that had seen centuries of liars, con artists, and desperate fools. Dimensional barriers. That's a new one. Most people just say mass relay malfunction. She gestured, and her biotic hold released the thugs, who scrambled away. "You're coming with me. We're going to have a conversation at Afterlife. If I like your answers, you might survive the night. If I don't," she smiled again. "Well, Omega has plenty of places to dispose of bodies." Strange glanced around the marketplace, this rotating cylinder called Omega, a station that felt like it existed in defiance of every governing authority. Criminals, mercenaries, refugees, all packed into metal corridors where violence simmered just beneath the surface. No sanctum. No ancient one's wisdom. No Wong to provide backup. Just a sorcerer without magic in a galaxy that didn't believe in sorcery. "Lead the way," Strange said. As Aria's enforcers surrounded him, he caught sight of advertisements flickering on every surface. Missing colony reports. Something called Cerberus. References to collectors and humanity under siege. And beneath it all, a nagging sensation that whatever had pulled him here wasn't finished. Something vast was watching. Calculating. Adjusting variables in an equation that spanned 50,000 years. The eye of Agamotto pulsed once against his chest, a reminder that even in a universe governed by different laws, time remained the one constant he might still manipulate. If he could survive long enough to learn how. If you want to see more characters enter the Mass Effect galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. The galaxy remembers. Afterlife pulsed with bass that Strange felt in his sternum. The club occupied Omega's prime real estate, multiple levels of VIP sections overlooking a main floor where dozens of species danced under strobing lights. Asari dancers moved with hypnotic grace on elevated platforms. The air tasted of ozone, alcohol, and something acrid his enhanced senses couldn't quite identify. Aria led him to the uppermost level, her private booth commanding a view of the entire establishment. She settled into her couch like a queen taking her throne, while her Krogan bodyguards positioned themselves at strategic angles. One of them, massive even by their species standards, never took his eyes off Strange. "Grizz doesn't like unknowns," Aria said, pouring herself something amber from a crystal decanter. "Neither do I. So let's start simple. What are you?" "I already told you. You told me a name and some mystical bullshit about dimensions." She leaned forward, her biotically enhanced voice cutting through the club's noise. "I've been on Omega for centuries. I've seen every con, every trick, every desperate idiot trying to carve out territory. You're something else. That energy signature when you arrived. It made every biotic in 3 districts feel like their amps were shorting out." Strange clasped his hands, feeling the tremor that never quite left. "I'm a sorcerer. A master of the mystic arts from a planet called Earth. I manipulate dimensional energies, bend reality through understood principles that your science hasn't discovered." He paused, watching her expression. "Or more accurately, I did. Whatever pulled me here severed my connection to those energy sources." Aria studied him with the intensity of someone reading a dossier. "Earth. That's a human colony. Alliance space, technically, though they're barely a decade past first contact with the Citadel races." She swirled her drink. "You're saying you're human. That's the least interesting thing about me. Maybe." She tapped a control on her Omni tool, a holographic interface materialized around her forearm. Data scrolled past in the air between them. "My people did a scan when you arrived. Your biotic potential reads 0. Completely inert. No ESO nodules in your nervous system, no AMP implants, nothing. Yet you generated an energy burst that registers off my equipment scale. She fixed him with a predatory stare. So either you're the most elaborate fake I've encountered, or you're exactly what you claim. Something that shouldn't exist. Strange reached for his magic again, trying to form even the simplest construct. Golden sparks flickered weakly, then dissolved. The feedback made his jaw clench. The energy I manipulate comes from other dimensions. Other planes of existence. This universe, he gestured vaguely. Your element 0, your mass effect fields, they're creating interference. Like trying to hear a whisper in a hurricane. Element 0, Aria repeated, something like amusement in her voice. You really are from nowhere, aren't you? ESO is the foundation of every advanced technology in the galaxy. Biotics, FTL travel, kinetic barriers, mass relays, all of it works because ESO can increase or decrease the mass of matter when subjected to electrical current. She stood, walking to the railing overlooking the dance floor. And you're telling me it's jamming your magic? The word dripped with skepticism. I'm telling you that I need to adapt. Strange joined her at the railing, watching the crowd below. I've studied for years to master energies most people in my universe can't perceive. I can learn your physics. Understand how your biotics manipulate mass and gravity. Find a way to make my abilities function within your universal constants. Why? The question was simple but carried weight. Strange turned to face her fully. Because something brought me here deliberately. I was tracking an anomaly, a tear in dimensional fabric, when an intelligence reached through and pulled. Not random. Calculated. Whatever it was, it used mathematics I've never encountered, equations that treated consciousness itself as a variable to be solved. Aria's expression shifted slightly. Not quite concern, but recognition. Collectors. I don't know what that means. They're a species working in the terminus systems. Abducting entire human colonies, leaving no trace. Tens of thousands of people vanished in the last few months. She pulled up a holographic display showing star charts. Alliance is too busy playing politics with the Council to do anything useful. Which means people like me are left dealing with refugees flooding into places like Omega. Strange felt a cold sensation that had nothing to do with temperature. Abductions. Mass disappearances. That sounds like harvesting. What do you know about harvesting? In my experience, when powerful entities engage in systematic collection of sentient beings, it's never for altruistic purposes. He thought of Thanos, of the snap that erased half of all life. Different method, similar philosophy. Who are the collectors working for? Aria's silence was answer enough. She didn't know, or wouldn't say. A commotion below drew their attention. The crowd parted as a group entered Afterlife, humans, mostly, wearing matching armor that read military even without insignia. They moved with the confidence of elite soldiers, weapons holstered but clearly ready. Leading them was a woman with red hair, sharp features, and the bearing of someone used to command. Aria, the woman called up, her voice amplified by her Omni tool. We need to talk about the dimensional anomaly. Now. And here I was having such a pleasant conversation. Aria glanced at Strange. Cerberus. They're a pro-human organization with more money than sense and a disturbing habit of being exactly where they shouldn't be. She raised her voice. I'm busy, Miranda. Make an appointment. The woman, Miranda, didn't leave. Instead, she gestured to her team, who began scanning the club with handheld devices. The anomaly originated in your territory. Omega Station experienced a 0.78% destabilization in its mass effect field generators. 3 districts lost kinetic barrier coverage for 94 seconds. That kind of disruption could have killed thousands if something had breached the hull. Strange felt multiple gazes lock onto him. Miranda's eyes widened slightly when she spotted him on the upper level. "There," she said, her scanner painting Strange with a targeting laser. "Biotic signature reads as non-standard. Possibly alien in origin, but humanoid physiology confirms." She stopped, confusion crossing her features. "He's human. But that's impossible. No human generates that kind of exotic energy without ESO exposure and years of training." "Told you he was interesting," Aria said dryly. Strange sighed. "I'm beginning to think this conversation is going to become repetitive. My name is Stephen Strange. I'm a dimensional anomaly that nearly destroyed a space station housing millions," Miranda interrupted. "You're coming with us. Cerberus has facilities that can properly contain and study whatever you are." The Krogan bodyguards shifted, weapons rising. Miranda's team responded in kind. The dance floor below cleared as civilians recognized the prelude to violence. "Nobody," Aria said, her voice dropping to something dangerous, "takes anyone off Omega without my permission." Strange raised his hands, the universal gesture of peace. "Perhaps we could discuss this without turning Afterlife into a war zone. I'm willing to share information, but I'm not anyone's lab experiment. I've had quite enough of being poked and prodded by people who think they're smarter than they are." Miranda's expression hardened. "You don't understand what's at stake. If the collectors can create dimensional rifts, if they're developing technology that bypasses mass relay networks entirely, they could strike anywhere. Abduct anyone. The entire galaxy's infrastructure becomes meaningless. Then we have a common enemy," Strange said. "Because I assure you, I didn't create the rift that brought me here. Something else did. Something that wanted me specifically in this location, at this time." He looked between Aria and Miranda. "Which suggests that either I'm bait for a trap, or I'm a piece in a much larger game. Either way, fighting among ourselves accomplishes nothing." The standoff held for 5 seconds. 10. Then Aria laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "I like you, Strange. You walk into Omega, blow up my marketplace, nearly tear a hole in my station, and somehow convince both me and Cerberus that cooperation might be useful." She waved dismissively at Miranda. "Stand down. If I wanted him dissected, I'd do it myself." Miranda didn't holster her weapon, but she lowered it fractionally. "The Illusive Man will want to speak with you, Dr. Strange. We're offering resources, protection, and a chance to understand what's happening. Aria offers." She glanced around Afterlife. This, Aria said, "is freedom. Something Cerberus doesn't understand." Strange massaged his temples, feeling a headache building that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with politics. He'd dealt with the Avengers' internal conflicts, with the UN's bureaucracy, with the Ancient One's cryptic guidance. This felt disturbingly similar, powerful factions offering alliance while maneuvering for advantage. Before he could respond, every holographic display in Afterlife flickered and died. The music cut out. Emergency lighting bathed the club in red. Then the screaming started from the lower districts. "Hull breach," one of Aria's guards reported, his Omni tool glowing with incoming data. "No. Not a breach. Energy surge. Something's forcing its way through Omega's outer hull without breaking it. Scanners reading, multiple signatures. Unknown configuration." Strange felt it before anyone else, a familiar wrongness, like the dimensional tear that had brought him here. But this time, he wasn't being pulled. This time, something was arriving. And it knew exactly where to find him. The hull of Omega shuddered. Strange felt it in his bones, a vibration that resonated with frequencies no natural force should produce. Through the club's viewports, he could see the station's exterior, a massive asteroid hollowed out and converted into a city for millions. Now, sections of its surface rippled like liquid metal, reforming around pods that carved through solid matter as if it were water. "Seeker swarms," Miranda said, her voice tight. "Collectors. They're boarding Omega directly. Aria was already moving, her Omni-tool blazing with commands. All districts, combat alert. Eclipse and Blood Pack mercs, earn your protection fees. Blue Suns, I don't care what contract you're on, defend my station or get spaced. She glanced at her Krogan guards. Grizz, full lockdown protocol. Nobody gets to this level. Strange watched the boarding pods through the viewport. They pulsed with an insectoid wrongness that triggered his mystical senses even through the dimensional interference. Not ships, organic technology fused with machine precision. And inside them, something that registered as both alive and constructed. They're here for me, he said quietly. Everyone turned. How do you know that? Miranda demanded. Because I can feel them searching. Whatever intelligence pulled me through dimensions is tracking me now. It knows I'm a variable outside its calculations, and it needs to understand or eliminate me. Strange's hands clenched. I've encountered entities like this before. Ancient. Methodical. They don't tolerate unknowns. The first explosion rocked the lower levels. On the security feeds Aria pulled up, Strange saw them, collectors. Bipedal insects the size of humans, moving with coordinated precision. Their weapons fired particle beams that carved through kinetic barriers like they weren't there. Behind them, floating drones unleashed clouds of smaller insects that paralyzed victims on contact. Seeker swarms, Miranda repeated. If those things sting you, you're conscious but completely immobilized. They preserve their targets alive. Her expression darkened. For harvest. Strange reached for his magic again, pushing past the interference. Golden sparks flickered around his hands, stronger than before. The eye of Agamotto grew warm against his chest. He was adapting, slowly learning to channel his will through the ambient element zero fields. It wasn't the same as drawing from dimensional energies, but it was something. I can help, he said. But I need to understand your biotics. How you manipulate mass, generate kinetic force, create barriers. If I can translate that into mystical principles. There's no time for a physics lesson, Aria snapped. She raised her hand, and blue energy coalesced around it, visible, tangible force made manifest. Biotics generate mass effect fields using ESO nodules in our nervous system, amplified by implants. We increase or decrease an object's mass, create gravitational distortions, throw kinetic force. It's all about mental discipline and precise neural control. Strange watched the way the energy moved, how it bent space around her hand. It was similar to how he manipulated the Tau mandalas, but grounded in this universe's physics rather than dimensional borrowing. Show me again. Slower. We're under attack. And I'm useless without understanding how to function here. Strange met her gaze. I've fought gods, Aria. Entities that devoured entire dimensions. But I did it with preparation and understanding. Give me 2 minutes to learn your power's foundation, and I'll give you something these collectors haven't calculated. Aria's expression flickered between annoyance and calculation. Then she thrust her hand forward. The biotic energy moved in waves. Strange could see it now, the way Element Zero responded to bioelectric stimulation, creating localized distortions in mass. It wasn't pulling energy from elsewhere. It was rewriting the fundamental properties of matter itself within a confined field. I see it, Strange breathed. He raised his own hands, calling not on dimensional energies but on the ESO fields permeating Omega's structure. His training in manipulating reality's fabric translated. It was like learning a new language that used familiar grammar. Golden light mixed with blue as he successfully generated his first hybrid construct. Not quite a spell. Not quite biotics. Something unprecedented. A mandala of light and mass effect energy materialized between his palms, rotating with mathematical precision. Miranda's scanner went haywire. That's impossible. He has no ESO exposure, no AMP implants, but he's generating a biotic field that registers at. She stared at her readout. That can't be right. Probably isn't, Aria said, but she was smiling. Welcome to Omega, Sorcerer. Try not to blow up my station while you're defending it. The collectors breached the third level. Security feeds showed them executing a coordinated assault, seeker swarms first to paralyze defenders, then collectors moving in with their weapons to harvest immobilized victims. They were working their way upward systematically, toward afterlife. Toward Strange. Miranda, Strange said, his mind already formulating strategy. Your Cerberus forces, can they establish a defensive perimeter at the second-level choke point? We can hold for maybe 5 minutes against that many collectors. 5 minutes is enough. Aria, I need your strongest biotics concentrated at the main entrance to afterlife. Not to fight, to channel. He turned to face both women. I can create a barrier, but I need raw biotic power to anchor it. More than I can generate alone. A barrier won't stop collector weapons, Aria said. Their particle beams punch through kinetic shields like tissue paper. This isn't a kinetic barrier. Strange formed the mandala again, expanding it until it was the size of a small vehicle. Runic symbols that belonged to neither mysticism nor mass effect physics rotated within its structure. In my universe, we call this a protection spell. Here, it's a weaponized manipulation of spacetime using element 0 as the catalyst. Anything that tries to pass through will experience localized temporal distortion, slowed to near immobility while the field remains active. Miranda's eyes widened. You're creating a stasis field. But not through conventional technology. You're doing it through, she struggled for words. Applied theoretical physics that shouldn't work. It's working because I'm making it work. That's what sorcery is, imposing will on reality through sufficient understanding and power. Strange's hands trembled slightly. The hybrid approach was taxing in ways pure magic never had been. But I can't maintain it alone. Not at the scale needed to seal off afterlife. Aria considered for exactly 3 seconds. Then she activated her calm, all afterlife security, converge on main entrance. Battle-ready biotics only. We're trying something stupid. She looked at Strange. This fails, and we're overrun. It won't fail. I've held dimensional barriers against demons that would eat your collectors for breakfast. Strange moved toward the club's main entrance, where stairs descended to the primary access corridor. I just need you to trust a concept your science says is impossible. Lucky for you, Aria said, following him, I've built an empire on things authorities say are impossible. They reached the entrance as collectors breached the second level. Miranda's Cerberus operatives were falling back in controlled retreat, laying down covering fire that barely slowed the insectoid swarm. Strange counted at least 40 collectors, with seeker swarms clouding the air like malevolent fog. He positioned himself at the threshold, legs braced, hands raised. The eye of Agamotto pulsed with increasing intensity. Now, Aria. Channel everything you have into my construct. Aria planted herself beside him, blue energy erupting from her entire body. Her power was immense, centuries of biotic mastery compressed into focused will. She thrust both hands toward Strange's mandala, and her energy poured into it like water into a dam. The hybrid barrier exploded outward, filling the entire corridor. Golden light interwove with blue mass effect fields, creating a wall of suspended spacetime that sealed the entrance. Strange could feel the strain immediately. Maintaining a spell while simultaneously manipulating element 0 required split-second calculations his mind had to make consciously rather than instinctively. The first collectors hit the barrier. They slowed instantly, their movements becoming glacial as localized time dilation affected only the matter attempting to pass through. Particle beams fired at full velocity crawled through the field at a snail's pace, their energy dissipating long before reaching the other side. It's holding, Miranda said, awe in her voice. The temporal distortion is keeping them contained. I've never seen technology like this. It's not technology, Strange ground out through clenched teeth. Sweat beaded on his forehead. It's will. And physics. And stubbornness. More biotics arrived, Aria's personal guard, Eclipse mercenaries, even a few independent contractors drawn by the promise of credits and survival. Strange directed them, having each pour their power into the mandala structure. The barrier strengthened, expanding to cover secondary access points. But something was wrong. Strange felt it through his connection to the hybrid construct, a presence pushing back. Not the collectors themselves. Something vast and calculating, analyzing his barrier with the precision of an advanced computer. Adapting. Learning. A voice echoed through the corridor, synthesized and layered with harmonics that suggested multiple entities speaking as one. This hurts you. The barrier flickered. Strange gasped as feedback pain lanced through his neural pathways. The presence was attacking not the physical manifestation but the underlying principles, rewriting the equations that made the barrier function. They're adapting, he managed. Whatever intelligence controls them is studying my technique and finding weaknesses. How long can you hold? Aria demanded. Strange watched collectors pressing against the barrier in increasing numbers. Behind them, he could see larger specimens, drones carrying harvesting equipment. And beyond those, something else. A single collector that stood taller than the rest, its carapace more ornate, eyes glowing with sickly yellow light. The voice came again, but this time it spoke directly into Strange's mind. You are an anomaly. Explain your existence. It wasn't a request. It was a command from something accustomed to absolute compliance. Strange smiled despite the pain, despite the impossible situation. He'd faced Dormammu in the dark dimension, negotiated with entities beyond human comprehension. I'll explain nothing to a voice without a name, he projected back, using every ounce of his mystical training to make his thoughts heard across the dimensional interference. Show yourself. Or are you afraid of what you'll find? The ornate collector's eyes flared brighter. When it spoke, Strange heard the voice clearly for the first time, not filtered through insectoid minions, but direct and terrible. We are Harbinger. We are your destruction. The barrier shattered. The backlash threw Strange backward, golden and blue energy exploding outward in a concussive wave that sent everyone sprawling. His connection to the hybrid construct severed violently, leaving his mind reeling from feedback that felt like touching a live wire with his consciousness. The eye of Agamotto burned cold against his chest, a warning he'd felt only when confronting threats that transcended normal reality. Collectors poured through the breached entrance. Seeker swarms filled the air like metallic locusts, their high-pitched keening drilling into Strange's ears. He rolled to his feet, hands already moving through defensive patterns. The crimson bands of Cyttorak manifested weakly, reinforced by borrowed biotic energy, enough to snare 3 collectors mid-charge and slam them into the walls with bone-crushing force. But there were too many. Aria fought like a goddess of war, her biotic powers creating localized singularities that crushed collectors into compact spheres of chitin and circuitry. Her Krogan guards roared and charged, shotguns thundering at point-blank range. Miranda's Cerberus operatives executed textbook tactics, overlapping fields of fire, tactical retreats to better positions, concentrated bursts on the larger drone specimens. It wasn't enough. The collectors adapted in real time, their movements becoming more coordinated with each passing second. They learned from casualties, adjusted formations, and always, pressed toward Strange with singular focus. They want you specifically, Miranda shouted over the chaos, her barrier flickering under sustained particle beam fire. Whatever you are, Harbinger has designated you high-priority acquisition. Strange threw up a shield of golden energy as a seeker swarm descended toward him. The insects bounced off, momentarily confused by magic that registered to their sensors as non-existent. But he felt their adaptation happening, microscopic adjustments to their attack patterns, recalibrations based on observed results. The ornate collector, Harbinger's vessel, strode through the carnage with terrible purpose. Its eyes locked onto Strange with an intelligence that felt utterly alien yet chillingly familiar. This wasn't simple artificial intelligence. This was something ancient and vast, something that had witnessed civilizations rise and fall across eons. Fascinating, Harbinger's voice echoed. Your energy signature exists outside calculated parameters. You manipulate forces that should not function in this reality. Explain how you circumvent universal constants. Strange didn't bother responding. Instead, he extended his hands and called upon the mirror dimension, or tried to. The spell stuttered, warped, then unexpectedly succeeded in a way he hadn't intended. Reality fractured around Harbinger's vessel, creating a localized pocket of recursive spacetime that folded inward on itself. Not the true mirror dimension, but something new. A hybrid space created by wedding mystical principles to element zero manipulation. Harbinger's vessel stumbled, its movements desynchronizing as it existed simultaneously in multiple overlapping timeframes. The other collectors froze, their swarm intelligence momentarily disrupted by losing direct connection to their controller. Now! Strange yelled. While they're disconnected. Aria didn't need to be told twice. She unleashed a biotic shockwave that sent collectors tumbling like bowling pins. Her guards pressed the advantage, executing precise shots that exploited gaps in chitin armor. Miranda's team advanced in disciplined formation, their combined fire cutting through the momentarily disorganized swarm. But Strange felt the pocket dimension destabilizing. Harbinger was analyzing it, understanding it, finding ways to anchor itself despite the temporal recursion. The vessel's eyes blazed brighter, and its voice carried an edge of what might have been curiosity, or hunger. Impressive. You create localized dimensional anomalies using element zero as catalyst. This technique was not predicted by any cycle model. A pause that felt like entire databases being searched. You are from beyond the relay network. Beyond this galaxy. Perhaps beyond this dimensional membrane. The pocket dimension collapsed. Harbinger's vessel emerged unharmed, and worse, upgraded. Its carapace now bore strange geometric patterns that pulsed with sickly energy. The other collectors resumed their attack with renewed coordination, but Strange noticed something that made his blood run cold. They were holding back. Not pressing their full advantage. They were studying him. We need to evacuate, he said, backing toward the upper levels. This isn't a combat operation anymore. It's a research expedition. They're collecting data on everything I do. Where exactly do you suggest we evacuate to? Aria demanded, crushing a collector's head with a biotic fist. This is Omega. There's nowhere to run that isn't still on my station. The docking bays, Miranda said. Cerberus has a stealth frigate on standby. We can extract to. Nobody's extracting anywhere, Aria snapped. I don't abandon Omega. Then Omega becomes a harvesting ground. Strange formed another shield, this one purely biotic energy without mystical reinforcement. He was learning, adapting just as the collectors were. Harbinger wants to study me. That means it will keep escalating until it captures me or determines I'm too dangerous to preserve. Either way, everyone on this station becomes collateral damage. An explosion rocked the club as collectors breached through the floor itself, particle beams carving through structural supports. The dance floor collapsed, sending civilians and fighters alike plummeting to the level below. Strange caught 3 falling people with hastily conjured telekinetic fields, crude compared to his usual work, but functional. Harbinger's vessel didn't pursue. It simply stood in the center of the chaos, watching. Analyzing. Strange could feel its attention like a physical weight, that vast intelligence dissecting every movement, every technique, every adaptation he made. You possess knowledge of futures, Harbinger said suddenly. The artifact you carry. Time manipulation capabilities detected. You have seen beyond this moment. The eye of Agamotto grew warmer. Strange's hand instinctively went to it, protective. He'd been careful not to use its full power, time manipulation was dangerous enough in his native dimension, and here where the physical laws were different, attempting it could tear holes in causality itself. But Harbinger knew. Somehow, it recognized the eye's nature. "Show us," Harbinger commanded. "Show us the futures you have witnessed. Demonstrate your temporal abilities. This information will be added to our calculations." "Go to hell," Strange said flatly. "Irrelevant. We have already catalogued 17 billion sentient species across multiple cycles. Your defiance is statistically insignificant." Harbinger's vessel took a step forward. "You will be preserved. Studied. Your capabilities will be incorporated into Reaper understanding. Resistance only delays the inevitable." Reaper. That word carried weight Strange felt in his soul, the same weight he'd felt when confronting Thanos, or when standing before Dormammu. An existential threat that viewed organic life as data to be processed and archived. "Aria," Strange said quietly, never taking his eyes off Harbinger. "I need you to trust me. One more time. I'm listening. I'm going to use the Eye of Agamotto. Attempt temporal manipulation in a universe whose rules I barely understand. It might work, might create a localized time loop, might tear a hole in spacetime large enough to destabilize this entire station." He glanced at her. "But if I don't, Harbinger learns everything about my abilities and spreads that knowledge to every Reaper in existence." Aria's expression was unreadable. Then she laughed, sharp and genuine. "You know what? I've had a boring few centuries. Let's see what happens when a sorcerer breaks physics on Omega." Miranda looked horrified. "You can't be serious. Temporal manipulation without proper shielding, without understanding how it interacts with mass relay networks, you could create a causality cascade that affects the entire terminus systems." "Or," Strange said, opening the Eye of Agamotto, "I could buy us enough time to survive the next 5 minutes. I'll worry about cascading temporal paradoxes after we're not being harvested by ancient machine gods." The eye opened fully, revealing the crystalline matrix within. In Strange's universe, it housed an infinity stone, a fragment of creation itself. Here, it was empty of that cosmic power, but its mechanisms remained. Mechanisms designed to manipulate time through any physics system, in any dimension, across any reality. Strange had spent years learning its secrets. Now he would discover if those secrets translated. He channeled every ounce of hybrid energy he'd learned to generate, mystical will merged with biotic manipulation, focused through the eye's ancient technology. The sensation was like trying to swim through concrete while simultaneously solving differential equations in his head. Time was different here, bound to mass effect fields and element zero physics in ways he didn't fully comprehend. But comprehension could come later. Instinct would have to suffice. Green energy erupted from the eye, washing over afterlife in a wave of chronological disruption. Strange felt reality buckle, felt causality strain against manipulation it was never designed to withstand. For a heartbeat, he saw everything, every possible future, every branching timeline, every consequence of every choice. In 14 million possible futures, Omega was destroyed or harvested. In 600,000, he died before learning to function in this universe. In 42, he successfully escaped, but Harbinger's knowledge of temporal manipulation led to Reaper victory across the entire galaxy. In one, just one, he found a path where his intervention mattered. Strange locked onto that single thread and pulled. Time stopped. Not completely. Not universally. But within afterlife, within a sphere roughly 300 meters in diameter, temporal flow ground to a crawl. Collectors froze mid-motion. Particle beams hung suspended in air. Aria's biotic attack crystallized into a sculpture of blue energy. Miranda's expression locked in a mask of shock. Only Strange and Harbinger's vessel remained mobile, two entities operating outside the temporal manipulation's full effect. Impossible, Harbinger said, but for the first time, Strange detected something other than cold calculation in that synthesized voice. Time manipulation without Reaper technology. Without element 0-based stasis fields. You violate fundamental principles. Strange took a step forward, every movement requiring concentration to maintain his chronological freedom. I'm done being studied, Harbinger. You want to understand how I function? Here's your answer. I'm a sorcerer who's fought threats you can't comprehend, using powers your cycles never predicted. I've bargained with demons, died thousands of times to save one dimension, and held an infinity stone in my bare hands. He raised his hands, the eye blazing with green light. And I'm telling you now, leave Omega. Leave me alone. Because if you force me to weaponize temporal manipulation in a universe I don't fully understand, the consequences will affect more than just this station. They'll ripple through your precious calculations, your ancient cycles, your entire Reaper understanding of organic life. Harbinger's vessel stood motionless for 3 full seconds. Processing. Calculating. Then, this encounter has provided sufficient data. You are designated unpredictable variable. Immediate acquisition, NON priority. Long-term monitoring, maximum priority. The collectors began retreating, actually retreating, flowing back toward their breaching pods with coordinated precision. Harbinger's vessel was the last to move, its eyes never leaving Strange. We will meet again, Stephen Strange. The Reapers always return. Prepare yourself. Then they were gone, and Strange let the temporal manipulation collapse. Time rushed forward in a disorienting surge. Aria stumbled as causality caught up with her. Miranda's suspended attack dissipated harmlessly. The club's damage suddenly felt both fresh and hours old simultaneously. Strange fell to his knees, exhaustion crashing over him like a physical wave. The eye of Agamotto sealed itself, having consumed more energy than he'd ever channeled through it. His hands shook uncontrollably, phantom pain from his accident mixed with genuine neural strain from hybrid casting. That, Aria said slowly, was the stupidest, most reckless, most impressive thing I've ever witnessed on Omega. Strange managed a weak smile. I've had better introductions to new universes. Miranda was scanning the area with her Omni tool, her expression growing increasingly disturbed. The temporal readings are off the charts. Whatever you did, it left residual chronological distortions throughout this entire sector. Time itself is flowing at irregular intervals, seconds stretching or compressing randomly. It'll stabilize, Strange said, hoping that was true. Probably. Give it a few hours. A few hours. Aria knelt beside him, studying his face. You just weaponized something council scientists say is theoretically impossible, drove off collectors that were demolishing my station, and casually mentioned you've died thousands of times. I need to know exactly what kind of trouble you represent, Strange. The complicated kind. He accepted her hand, letting her pull him to his feet. Harbinger called itself a Reaper. Mentioned cycles. Preservation of organic species through harvesting. That sounds like an extinction-level threat with philosophical justifications. Miranda and Aria exchanged a look that confirmed his suspicions. You need to meet someone, Miranda said finally. Someone who's been trying to convince the galaxy that the Reapers are real. That they're coming, and that we're not ready. She activated her Omni tool. Commander Shepard. The first human Spectre, the one who destroyed Sovereign at the Battle of the Citadel 2 years ago. Strange felt a chill of recognition. In that single glimpse of possible futures, he'd seen a name repeated across countless timelines, Shepard. A nexus point. A variable around which galactic fate pivoted. Then I think, Strange said, we need to have that meeting very soon. Because Harbinger just learned I exist. And something tells me the Reapers don't tolerate unknown variables for long. 3 days after the Collector attack, Strange stood in Aria's private office watching Omega's damaged sectors undergo repairs. Kinetic barrier generators were being replaced. Hull breaches sealed. Bodies recovered from collapsed sections. The casualty count stood at 247, remarkably low given the scale of the assault, but each number represented a life ended by forces that viewed sentient beings as research specimens. "You've been quiet," Aria said, reviewing damage reports on multiple holographic screens. "Unusual for someone who talks as much as you do." Strange didn't look away from the viewport. "I've been thinking about what Harbinger said. About cycles. About preservation through harvesting." He finally turned to face her. "In my experience, when ancient intelligences claim they're acting for the greater good, they're usually justifying genocide with philosophy. Welcome to the Reaper problem." Aria dismissed several screens with a gesture. 2 years ago, Commander Shepard brought proof that the Reapers exist, a massive ship called Sovereign that attacked the Citadel. The Council acknowledged it, briefly, then decided it was just a rogue Geth dreadnought. Easier to accept than 50,000-year cycles of extinction. Denial is a powerful defense mechanism. I watched half the universe refuse to believe Thanos was real until he'd already collected half the Infinity Stones. Strange rubbed his temples, feeling the persistent headache that hadn't left since the temporal manipulation. "The difference is, I could see Thanos coming. Could analyze his psychology, predict his moves. Harbinger," he paused. "Harbinger thinks on timescales I can barely comprehend. It's optimizing strategies across millennia." Miranda entered without knocking, carrying a data pad. "Shepard's en route. The Normandy will dock in 6 hours." She handed the pad to Strange. "I've compiled everything Cerberus knows about the Reapers. It's not much, but it's more than the Council admits publicly." Strange scrolled through the data. Ancient warnings from extinct civilizations. The Prothean extinction 50,000 years ago. Patterns of advanced species vanishing every cycle, leaving only ruins and inactive mass relays. The mathematical precision of it was chilling, not random catastrophe but deliberate, systematic harvest. "The mass relays," he said slowly. "They're not just transportation infrastructure. They're corrals. Forcing organic civilization to develop along predetermined paths, making them predictable. Easy to find when the harvest comes." The Illusive Man reached the same conclusion, Miranda confirmed. "The entire galactic community has been developing inside a cage built by the Reapers themselves. We think we're exploring the galaxy, but we're really just following roads they paved 50,000 years ago." Strange felt a cold sensation that had nothing to do with temperature. It was elegant, in a horrifying way. Build the infrastructure that makes space travel possible, ensure every species uses it, then return periodically to harvest the civilizations that grew along your predetermined paths. Controlled cultivation on a galactic scale. "There's something else," Miranda continued. "We've been analyzing the temporal distortion you created. The residual chronological effects are interacting with Omega's mass effect field generators in unexpected ways. Some areas are experiencing time dilation, seconds passing slower or faster than baseline. It's minor, barely noticeable, but if scaled up, it could be weaponized," Strange finished. "Or catastrophically destabilize large sections of spacetime." "Yes, I'm aware. That's why I've been researching your element zero physics obsessively for 3 days." He gestured at the scattered datapads covering Aria's desk. "I need to understand exactly how my abilities interact with your universal constants before I attempt any major workings." "You're scared." "I'm cautious." "There's a difference." "No, you're scared. I've seen enough fighters to recognize it. You're powerful, maybe more powerful than anything I've encountered in 4 centuries. But you're operating blind in a universe whose rules you don't fully understand." She stood, walking to a secure cabinet and retrieving a bottle of Thessian wine. "So let me offer some advice from someone who's survived this long by adapting. Stop trying to be what you were. Become what you need to be here." Strange accepted the glass she poured, considering her words. She was right, of course. He'd been trying to replicate his mystical abilities using element zero as a substitute for dimensional energy. But that was thinking like an outsider, trying to force familiar patterns onto alien physics. What if he approached it differently? Not mysticism adapted to mass effect fields, but an entirely new discipline that merged both. I need access to biotic training facilities, he said. And specialists who understand the theoretical limits of mass effect manipulation. Not just practical application, pure theory. The cutting edge of what your science says is possible. That would be the Asari, Miranda said. They've been studying biotics for thousands of years. Their matriarchs can manipulate mass effect fields in ways that seem like magic to other species. She paused. There's also Mordin Solus, a Solarian scientist currently working on Omega. Brilliant, eccentric, knows more about genetic modification and exotic physics than anyone I've met. If you want to understand how to push boundaries, he's worth consulting. Set up meetings with both, Strange said. I need to learn everything I can before Shepard arrives. If the Reapers are coming, and after meeting Harbinger, I believe they are, then I need to be more than a dimensional refugee with parlor tricks. I need to be useful. Aria smiled slightly. You drove off a collector assault force and bought Omega time to evacuate civilians. You're already useful. But I appreciate ambition. She raised her glass. To adaptation. And to whatever the hell you're becoming in my universe. They drank, and Strange felt the Theshan wine burn pleasantly. It was strong enough to affect even his enhanced metabolism, which meant it was probably toxic to baseline humans. Just another reminder that he was playing by new rules now. Mordin Solus's lab occupied a converted storage section in Omega's lower wards. Strange navigated through corridors that smelled of industrial solvents and cooking food from a dozen species stalls. The cultural diversity was staggering, more alien species concentrated in a few kilometers than existed in his entire home universe. He found the lab behind a door marked with biohazard warnings in 6 languages. Inside, organized chaos reigned. Equipment Strange didn't recognize lined every surface, holographic displays showing genetic sequences and particle physics equations. And moving between it all with manic energy was a Solarian, thin, amphibian features, eyes that missed nothing. Ah! Dimensional anomaly. Dr. Strange, yes. Heard about temporal manipulation. Fascinating. Theoretically impossible using conventional understanding. Must use alternative framework. Element zero interaction with spacetime curvature, perhaps. Or tapping into dark energy directly. Mordin spoke rapidly, barely pausing for breath. Mordin Solus. Solarian STG, formerly. Now independent researcher. Genophage specialist, but maintain interest in exotic physics. Please, sit. Or stand. Solarians often stand. Short lifespan, must optimize time usage. Strange blinked, processing the verbal onslaught. I need to understand biotic manipulation at the theoretical level. Not just how it's done, but why it works. The underlying principles that make element zero responsive to conscious will. Excellent question. Answer complex. Element zero creates mass effect fields when subjected to electrical current. Standard physics. Interesting part, biotic nervous systems generate precisely tuned bioelectric signals. Not random. Pattern-based, intention-driven. Mind shapes field through unconscious calculation of gravitational mathematics. Brain becomes biological computer solving equations impossibly fast. Mordin pulled up a holographic display showing neural pathways. Asari have natural advantage. Long lifespan allows extensive training. Centuries to refine control, develop techniques other species cannot match. Humans comparatively crude. But effective. Raw power compensating for lack of finesse. Strange studied the neural patterns, recognizing something familiar. It's similar to mystical training. The Ancient One taught that reality responds to focused will combined with understanding of fundamental principles. You're describing the same process, just using element 0 instead of dimensional energy. Precisely. Magic, if we call it that, merely manipulation of energy using mind as interface. Your universe uses one energy type. This universe uses element 0. Principle identical. Implementation differs. Mordin gestured enthusiastically. Your temporal manipulation proves concept. Used element 0 to achieve effect normally requiring infinity stone, assuming infinity stones exist in your origin dimension. Impressive adaptation. Also terrifying. Chronological distortion still measurable on Omega. Could cause cascading paradoxes if not carefully controlled. I'm aware of the risks, Strange said dryly. That's why I'm here. I need to refine my technique before I accidentally create a causality loop that erases the station's last 3 days from history. Would be historically significant. Also catastrophic. Recommend extreme caution. Mordin pulled up another display, this one showing element 0 particle structures. Theory. Your mystical abilities function through accessing higher dimensional energy. Here, higher dimensions exist but function differently. Mass relays prove this, manipulate spacetime by accessing higher dimensional geometry. Perhaps your magic can interface with relay network directly? Strange felt a spark of recognition. The mass relays are dimensional technology disguised as conventional FTL transportation. Correct. Built by Reapers, probably, using understanding of physics beyond current galactic knowledge. Create corridor through higher dimensional space, allow instantaneous travel across enormous distances. Very similar to your portal creation, yes. Different method, same underlying principle. The implications cascaded through Strange's mind. If the mass relays operated on dimensional principles he understood, then theoretically he could interface with them. Create portals without sling rings by tapping into the relay network's higher dimensional geometry. But that would also mean the Reapers have mastery of dimensional manipulation, he said quietly. That's how they've survived for millions of years. They're not just advanced technology. They're operating on principles that transcend conventional physics. Troubling conclusion. Also likely correct. Mordin's expression grew serious. Studied sovereign remains after Battle of Citadel. Technology completely unlike conventional design. Self-repairing. Self-aware. Uses mass effect fields in ways theory says impossible. As if Reapers understand element 0 at level current species cannot conceive. Which means Harbinger wasn't just studying my abilities out of curiosity. It was analyzing a competitor. Another entity that manipulates dimensional forces. Strange felt pieces clicking into place. The Reapers don't just harvest organic life. They're hoarding knowledge. Every cycle, they preserve the technological and scientific achievements of species they destroy. Incorporating it. Evolving. Explains their perfection. Millions of years of accumulated knowledge from billions of species across countless cycles. Mordin's voice dropped. Galaxy fighting enemy with million-year advantage. Statistically, survival probability approaches 0. Strange met the Solarian's eyes, seeing genuine concern behind the manic energy. In my universe, I watched half of all life get erased by a single being with a philosophical justification and 6 infinity stones. Everyone said defeat was inevitable. Statistically certain. He smiled slightly. We won anyway. Because statistics don't account for individuals who refuse to accept inevitability. Inspiring speech. Also logically flawed. But appreciate sentiment. Mordin pulled up a new screen showing complex equations. If serious about fighting Reapers, need more than inspiration. Need concrete advantages. Your dimensional manipulation could provide that. If, very large if, successfully integrate with mass relay network. Could create tactical advantages Reapers not prepared for. Portals in combat. Temporal distortions against their forces. Possibilities extensive. But extremely dangerous if I make mistakes, Strange said. I understand. That's why I need help. Someone who understands the theory well enough to tell me when I'm about to do something catastrophically stupid. Can provide theoretical framework. Cannot guarantee prevention of catastrophic stupidity. That requires personal judgment. Mordin regarded him thoughtfully. Question: when created temporal loop against Harbinger, did you see futures? Possible timelines? Strange hesitated, then nodded. Millions of them. Most ending in failure. I found the one path that worked. Precognition through temporal manipulation. Extremely valuable. Also extremely psychologically damaging if used repeatedly. Knowing all possible futures, watching billions die in alternate timelines, bearing weight of choosing which reality manifests. Recommend extreme restraint. I've used it before. Against Dormammu. I died thousands of times to save one dimension. Strange's hands trembled slightly, phantom memory of those deaths, each one unique and agonizing. I know the cost. I'll use it only when absolutely necessary. Good. Then perhaps have actual chance against Reapers. Small chance. But statistically better than zero. Mordin extended a hand, a gesture he'd clearly learned from working with humans. Will assist research. Provide theoretical framework. Prevent obviously stupid mistakes. Cannot guarantee survival, but can maximize probability of useful contribution before inevitable death. Strange shook the Solarian's hand, appreciating the brutal honesty. You're remarkably optimistic for someone predicting inevitable death. Solarian lifespan, 40 years. Already 38. Death inevitable regardless of Reaper involvement. Might as well make final years scientifically significant. Mordin's eyes gleamed. Also, working with dimensional sorcerer who breaks physics. Too interesting to refuse. Even if leads to catastrophic temporal paradox destroying station. Despite everything, Strange laughed. I like you, Mordin. You remind me of my friend Wong. Practical, brutally honest, and completely unfazed by cosmic-level absurdity. High praise. Hope to meet this Wong someday. If dimensional barriers ever restored. Until then, should begin experiments. 6 hours until Shepard arrives. Much to learn, little time. Mordin was already pulling up schematics. First lesson, proper biotic amp integration. Your current technique crude, inefficient. Can improve by factor of 3, minimum. Then discuss temporal manipulation safety protocols. Then perhaps address clothing situation. Strange glanced down at his crimson cloak of levitation and blue robes, now torn and scorched from the collector battle. What's wrong with my clothes? Stand out dramatically on Omega. Also impractical for combat. Recommend armor with kinetic barriers. Still mysterious, but less likely to attract immediate attention. Also provides protection against mass accelerator rounds, particle beams, and other unpleasant methods of death. The cloak is enchanted. It provides protection and mobility assistance. Mordin examined the cloak with scientific interest. Fascinating. Sentient garment responding to wearer's needs. Also violates multiple thermodynamic principles. We'll study later. For now, accept enchanted cloak as acceptable compromise between practicality and personal style. As Mordin launched into a detailed explanation of biotic amp technology, Strange settled in to learn. This was familiar territory, the student role, absorbing knowledge from an expert, gradually building understanding. He'd done it with the Ancient One, learning mystical arts. Now he would do it with element zero physics. And when Shepard arrived, he would be ready. Ready to contribute more than temporal parlor tricks. Ready to be what this galaxy needed. Whatever that turned out to be. The Normandy State Route 2 docked with Omega at exactly the time Miranda specified. Strange watched from Afterlife's upper level as the sleek frigate maneuvered into position, a vessel that combined military precision with cutting-edge stealth technology. Cerberus had spared no expense building it, and the result was something that looked more like a work of art than a warship. Impressive engineering, Strange murmured. It should be, Aria said beside him. The Illusive Man dumped billions of credits into that ship. All to bring back one person. She nodded toward the docking corridor. Here comes your Reaper expert. Commander Shepard entered Afterlife with the confidence of someone who'd walked through worse. Human, female, with red hair and scars that looked recent, facial reconstruction, if Strange's medical knowledge translated correctly. She moved like a soldier, but her eyes held something more. Wait. The burden of knowledge others refused to accept. Strange recognized it immediately. He'd carried the same weight after the time stone showed him possible futures. Beside Shepard walked a squad that could only be described as eclectic. A Turian with distinctive blue clan markings, Gurus Vicarian, Miranda's briefing had said. Formerly CSEC, now Shepard's right hand. An Asari in white and red armor radiated biotic energy with casual intensity. A Krogan who made Aria's guards look small. And others, a mix of species and skill sets that suggested Shepard recruited based on competence rather than politics. Commander, Miranda greeted, descending the stairs to meet them. Thank you for coming. You said there was a dimensional anomaly that drove off collectors using temporal manipulation. Shepard's voice was measured, professional. That kind of intel doesn't get ignored. Her eyes found Strange. I'm guessing that's him. Strange descended the stairs, the cloak billowing dramatically despite the lack of wind. Some habits died hard. Dr. Stephen Strange. Former neurosurgeon, current master of the mystic arts, recent immigrant to your universe courtesy of forces I'm still investigating. Shepard studied him with the intensity of a commander assessing a potential threat or asset. Miranda's report said you claim to be from another dimension. That you manipulate something called magic. That you held off a collector assault force and made Harbinger retreat. She crossed her arms. I've seen a lot of impossible things in the last few years. Dead Reapers. Prothean ruins. People coming back from the dead. She gestured at herself. But magic is new. I prefer to think of it as applied dimensional physics with consciousness as the primary interface, Strange said. But yes, magic is an acceptable shorthand. The Turian, Gurus, made a sound that might have been a laugh. I like him already. Anyone who can make Harbinger back off deserves respect. Or extreme caution, the Asari added. I'm Samara, a Justicar. I've studied Asari philosophy and biotics for centuries, Commander, and I've never encountered anything like what Miranda described. Energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Temporal manipulation without conventional stasis technology. If he's what he claims, he represents either our greatest asset or our greatest threat. Why not both? Strange said mildly. I find the two categories aren't mutually exclusive. Shepard's expression didn't change, but Strange detected the faintest hint of amusement. Aria, can we use your office? This conversation needs privacy. My office is your office, Shepard. As long as you remember who actually owns Omega. Aria led them upward, her guards taking positions that kept everyone in sight without being overtly threatening. The office sealed behind them, proper security, Strange noted, with electronic countermeasures that would make eavesdropping difficult. Shepard waited until everyone was positioned before speaking. Let's start simple. Miranda's report says the collector specifically targeted you. That Harbinger itself took direct control to study your abilities. Shepard leaned against Aria's desk. Why? Because I'm an unknown variable in a calculation the Reapers have been perfecting for millions of years, Strange said. My abilities function on principles that don't exist in your universe naturally. I manipulate dimensional energies, access higher planes of reality, and most importantly, I can perceive possible futures through temporal manipulation. That makes me unpredictable to entities that rely on perfect information and statistical certainty. You can see the future. Shepard's tone was flat, skeptical. Strange opened the eye of Agamotto. Green energy pulsed gently, and he felt the familiar pull of chronological possibility. I can see possible futures. Millions of them, branching from every decision, every action, every random quantum event. Most are noise. But sometimes, in critical moments, I can identify the paths that lead to desired outcomes. He closed the eye before the temptation to use it became overwhelming. I used it against Harbinger. Saw 14 million futures where this station was destroyed. Found the one where we survived. That's what drove Harbinger off, not fear, but recognition that I could navigate probability in ways its calculations couldn't predict. The room was silent for several heartbeats. Then the Krogan spoke, a deep rumble that carried both amusement and something darker. So you're saying you're a precognitive who breaks physics and pisses off ancient machine gods? Grunt approves. This is going to be fun. It's going to be complicated, Shepard corrected. She pushed off the desk, pacing. The collectors have been abducting entire human colonies. Tens of thousands of people vanished without a trace. We've been tracking them, trying to find where they're taking the victims and why. Now you're telling me they're working for the Reapers, and the Reapers are, what? Harvesting species every 50,000 years. That's what Harbinger implied, Strange confirmed. Cycles of extinction. Preservation through destruction. It has the logic of an entity that's optimized survival by eliminating threats before they mature. The Protheans, Samara said quietly. They were harvested 50,000 years ago. Everything we know about them comes from ruins and fragmented records. The Reapers erased an entire galactic civilization so thoroughly that we're only now beginning to understand what was lost. Gurus's mandibles twitched. And we're next on the menu. Great. How do we fight something that's been perfecting genocide for millions of years? The same way you fight any seemingly invincible enemy, Strange said. Find the weakness they don't know they have. Exploit assumptions they've held so long they've become blind spots. He looked at Shepard. You destroyed Sovereign. That means the Reapers can be killed. The question is whether they can be killed fast enough to matter. Shepard met his gaze, and Strange saw steel behind her eyes. I've been trying to convince the Council the Reapers are real for 2 years. They dismissed Sovereign as a Geth dreadnought. Called me paranoid. But I know what I saw in the visions from the Prothean beacon. I know what Sovereign said before I killed it. She straightened. If you can help stop the Reapers, I'll work with you. But I need to know what you can actually do. What you're willing to do. Show them, Aria said. Words are cheap on Omega. Demonstration is currency. Strange considered for a moment, then extended his hand. A mandala of golden light interwoven with blue biotic energy materialized, rotating with mathematical precision. This is a hybrid construct. Mystical principles merged with element zero manipulation. I can create shields that operate on different physics than your kinetic barriers, meaning Reaper weapons optimized to penetrate conventional defenses might not work. I can open portals through higher dimensional space, though that's still experimental and dangerous given the mass relay network interference. And I can, with significant risk, manipulate localized time. He let the construct fade. But more importantly, I bring perspective from outside your galactic culture. I'm not bound by council politics or species prejudices or 50,000 years of Reaper conditioning. I can see patterns you might miss because you're too close to them. Like what? Shepard asked. Like the fact that every species in this galaxy develops along remarkably similar paths. You all use mass relays. You all discover element zero and build your technology around it. You all eventually reach the Citadel and join the galactic community. Strange gestured at the star map on Aria's wall. That's not natural evolution. That's cultivated development. The Reapers built a cage so sophisticated that the prisoners think they're free. The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. Keela, someone whispered. Strange turned to see Aquarian, Tali, Miranda's briefing supplied, standing near the door. She'd entered quietly during the conversation. The mass relays, the Citadel, even the Geth uprising. What if none of it was random? What if the Reapers engineered the conditions for galactic civilization to develop exactly how they wanted? Then every major conflict in the last 50,000 years might have been orchestrated, Gurus said slowly. The Rachni Wars. The Krogan Rebellions. The Morning War between Quarians and Geth. All of it designed to keep us fighting each other instead of preparing for the real threat. Divide and conquer on a timescale measured in millennia, Strange confirmed. It's brilliant, in a horrifying way. By the time the Reapers return, organic civilization is too fragmented to mount unified resistance. Species hate each other over grudges the Reapers helped create. Shepard's jaw clenched. Then we need to change the pattern. Unite the species, build a coalition that doesn't play by the Reapers' rules. She looked at Strange. And we need advantages they won't expect. Like a sorcerer who manipulates dimensions. I'll help, Strange said. But understand that my abilities are still adapting to your universe. I'm more limited than I was in my own dimension, and every use of temporal manipulation risks cascading paradoxes I might not be able to contain. I'm powerful, but I'm not a solution to galactic extinction. Just one piece of a much larger puzzle. One piece is more than we had yesterday, Shepard said. She extended her hand. Welcome to the crew, Dr. Strange. Fair warning, we're about to assault a collector ship to rescue abducted colonists and gather intel on what the hell they're doing with all those people. It's dangerous, probably suicidal, and our odds of survival are somewhere between slim and non-existent. Strange shook her hand, feeling the strength in her grip. Commander, I once died thousands of times in a time loop to bargain with a dimensional demon. Suicidal missions are practically my specialty. For the first time, Shepard smiled, a brief flash that suggested she'd found something rare, someone who understood the weight she carried. Then let's get to work. We've got a lot of planning to do and not much time to do it. As the meeting shifted into tactical discussion, ship capabilities, team composition, collector defenses, Strange felt something he hadn't experienced since arriving in this universe: purpose. Not just survival, but direction. A mission that mattered. The Reapers thought they'd calculated everything. They'd optimized their harvest across millions of years, perfecting the process of extinction. But they hadn't calculated for a sorcerer who specialized in finding the one impossible path through infinite futures. Strange glanced at the eye of Agamotto, feeling its cold weight against his chest. Soon, he would need to use it again. Look beyond the present moment to see what was coming. Map the possibilities and find the thread that led to survival. But for now, he would learn. Adapt. Become whatever this galaxy needed to survive its ancient cycle. After all, he'd promised Wong he'd be back for their standing Tuesday lunch appointment. He fully intended to keep that promise. Even if it meant breaking a 50-million-year-old pattern of extinction to do it. The collector cruiser hung in space like a predatory insect, its hull pulsing with biomechanical wrongness that made Strange's mystical senses recoil. They'd tracked it for 3 days, following distress signals from a recently attacked colony. Now, the Normandy drifted in stealth mode, sensors painting a target that shouldn't exist by any reasonable standard of physics or biology. Ship reads as partially organic, Joker's voice came through the comm, the pilot's usual humor strained. Hull composition is some kind of living metal. It's breathing, Commander. The ship is actually breathing. Strange stood in the Normandy's Combat Information Center, studying the tactical display alongside Shepard and her core team. The vessel was massive, easily 3 times the Normandy's size, and bristled with weapons that his brief education in Mass Effect warfare told him were far beyond conventional technology. Mordin's analysis was correct, he said quietly. Reaper technology doesn't just mimic organic life. It merges with it. Creates something that's neither machine nor biology but both simultaneously. Which means boarding it is going to be a nightmare, Cerberus said, checking his sniper rifle for the third time. Organic ships can adapt. Seal breaches, reroute systems, maybe even regenerate damage. We can't just shoot our way through and expect it to stay shot. Actually, Strange said, forming a small mandala between his palms, that's where I might be useful. Organic or not, the ship still operates on element zero principles. Mass effect fields for propulsion, kinetic barriers for defense. I can disrupt those. Create localized zones where their technology simply stops functioning. Shepard turned from the display. How localized? Can you shut down an entire section? In theory, yes. In practice, I won't know until I try. Strange let the mandala dissipate. Mordin helped me develop something I'm calling a null field, a hybrid construct that inverts element zero polarity within a defined area. Essentially creates a bubble where EZO stops responding to electrical stimulation. No biotics, no barriers, no Mass Effect technology of any kind. Including our own gear, Tali pointed out, her Omni tool displaying technical schematics. If you shut down element zero in a combat zone, our weapons stop working too. Mass accelerator rifles need EZO to function. So do kinetic barriers. We'd be fighting with, what? Pointed sticks. My magic still functions. Mystic weapons don't rely on element zero. Strange conjured a blade of golden energy for emphasis. And conventional kinetic weapons, bullets propelled by chemical explosives rather than Mass Effect fields, would work. Primitive by your standards, but effective. The collectors won't expect it, Shepard said slowly, her tactical mind clearly working through possibilities. They've optimized their combat doctrine against enemies using standard galactic technology. If we suddenly change the rules, force them to fight without their advantages, she nodded. It could work. But we need to be surgical. Target specific sections when we need the advantage, then let our tech come back online for the rest. There's another problem, Miranda said, pulling up biological scans. The collectors themselves are partially synthetic. Cybernetic implants integrated with organic tissue. If Strange shuts down element zero in an area, he might be disabling them directly. Is that supposed to be a problem? Grunt rumbled. Sounds like an advantage to me. It is, Samara interjected, if we understand the full implications. But we're discussing using untested abilities against an enemy we barely comprehend, on a ship that violates known physics, while operating under time pressure. The margin for error is non-existent. Strange appreciated her caution. It mirrored his own concerns. I won't use the null field unless the situation demands it. But it's better to have the option and not need it than the reverse. Agreed. Shepard called up the tactical display. Here's the plan. We're taking 2 teams. Team Alpha, me, Cerberus, Strange, and Jack, boards through the forward hull breach from the colony attack. Jack's biotics get us through sealed sections, Strange provides exotic support. Team Bravo, Miranda, Grunt, Samara, holds the Normandy's position and provides fire support if we need extraction. I should be on the boarding team, Miranda objected. My Cerberus training makes you essential for commanding the Normandy if something happens to me, Shepard interrupted. This is non-negotiable, Miranda. Strange represents our wildcard advantage, but only if we have a fallback position. That's you. Strange noted the tension between them, Cerberus loyalty versus Shepard's command authority. The Illusive Man's shadow loomed over this entire operation, funding it while simultaneously trying to control it. Jack. Shepard called toward the back of the CIC. A human woman emerged from the shadows, young, covered in tattoos that glowed faintly with biotic energy, radiating barely controlled violence. She'd been leaning against the wall, ignored or avoiding attention, but when Shepard spoke her entire demeanor sharpened. "You want me on the front line?" Jack's voice carried a mixture of suspicion and eagerness. "Going into a collector ship to kick some insect ass?" "You're the strongest human biotic I've ever seen," Shepard said bluntly. "And you don't follow rules, which means you adapt fast when plans go wrong. You're perfect for this." Jack studied Strange with eyes that had seen too much suffering for someone her age. "What about Magic Boy? He gonna keep up, or am I babysitting?" Strange met her gaze evenly. "I fought demons that would eat your nightmares for breakfast. I'll keep up." "Good." Jack cracked her knuckles, biotic energy crackling around her fists. "Been wanting to hurt something that hurt me. Collectors took me once, a lifetime ago. Time to return the favor." The words carried weight that made Strange's mystical senses tingle. Jack wasn't just angry, she was a weapon forged by trauma, barely contained by her own will. Dangerous to enemies and potentially to allies. But undeniably powerful. "EDI, Shepard said, addressing the ship's AI, what's our window?" "The collector cruiser will remain in scanning range for another 6 hours, 12 minutes, the synthetic voice responded. "After that, it will transit to an unknown destination via their equivalent of mass relay technology. If we're boarding, it must be within the next 30 minutes to avoid detection. Then we move now." Shepard turned to her team. "Check your gear. Strange, stay close to me during the breach. I know you're powerful, but you've never fought collectors in close quarters. They're fast, coordinated, and they will try to separate us. Don't let them." "Understood." As the team dispersed to prepare, Strange felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to find Mordin, who'd been observing from near the galaxy map. "Quick advice before probable death," the Solarian said rapidly. "Collectors use seeker swarms as primary paralysis method. Your shield should resist, but if overwhelmed, immediate temporal acceleration recommended. Speed yourself up relative to swarm, avoid stings. Also, Harbinger can assume direct control of any collector drone. Watch for yellow eye glow. Indicates Reaper consciousness override. Extreme danger. Suggest immediate maximum force response. Thanks for the pep talk, Mordin." "Not pep talk. Tactical briefing. Pep talk would be, you'll probably survive. Maybe. Less useful." Mordin handed him a small device. Biotic Amp Enhancer. Experimental. Increases field strength by 37%. Also increases neural strain by 42%. Use sparingly or risk cerebral hemorrhage. Strange attached it to his belt. "You're just full of good news today. Realism better than false optimism. False optimism leads to surprise death. Realistic expectation of danger leads to appropriate caution. Appropriate caution leads to slightly higher survival probability." Mordin paused. "Also, good luck. Genuinely hope you survive. Research partnership proving quite productive. Would be shame to lose you to collector harvesting. I'll do my best not to get harvested." Acceptable response. "Now go." Shepard waiting. Collectors not getting less dangerous with time. The hull breach yawned before them like a wound in reality. Strange floated in zero gravity, the Normandy's airlock behind them and the collector ship ahead. His cloak kept him maneuvered, responding to unconscious thought as it always had. Around him, Shepard, Cerberus, and Jack used magnetic boots and careful thruster bursts to navigate. "Spooky," Jack said, eyeing the organic-looking hull. "It's like looking into a corpse's mouth." "Accurate metaphor," Cerberus said. "Collectors are basically Protheans transformed by Reapers. We're literally boarding a ship made from the species they harvested last cycle." Strange extended his mystical senses, probing the vessel's nature. What he felt made his skin crawl, consciousness, but fragmented and enslaved. The ship wasn't just organic. It was aware, in some terrible limited way. A once sentient being reduced to servitude, its thoughts nothing but obedience to Reaper commands. "This is wrong," he said quietly. "This ship is suffering. Has been suffering for 50,000 years." Shepard looked at him sharply. "Can you sense that?" "I can feel it. Like psychic screaming that never ends." Strange steadied himself. "We need to move fast. Being here is unpleasant." They crossed the threshold into the breach. Immediately, artificial gravity took hold, the collector ship generating its own field. Strange's boots touched the deck, which pulsed beneath him like a heartbeat. The interior was all wrong angles and organic curves, lit by bioluminescent strips that cast everything in sickly green light. "Motion sensors picking up activity 200 meters ahead," Shepard said, her assault rifle raised. "Multiple contacts. Looks like they know we're here." "Of course they do," Jack said. "This whole ship is probably one big organism. We're like viruses that just injected ourselves. Time to show them what viruses can do." They advanced through corridors that seemed to breathe, past chambers filled with pods that Strange tried very hard not to examine too closely. Some were empty. Some weren't. The ones that weren't held shapes that might have been human once. "Don't look," Shepard said, her voice tight. "Stay focused. We're here to stop this from happening to more people." Then the collectors came. They swarmed from side passages like nightmare insects, their weapons spitting particle beams that carved through the air. Shepard returned fire immediately, her assault rifle rounds punching through chitin armor with practiced precision. Cerberus took position on an elevated platform, his sniper rifle barking out measured death. Jack screamed and pure biotic force erupted from her body. Collectors lifted off their feet, slammed into walls, crushed by gravitational pressure that turned their exoskeletons into shattered fragments. She was terrifying, all raw power with minimal control, but devastatingly effective. Strange raised his hands and golden shields materialized, deflecting particle beams into the walls. He could feel the weapon's energy trying to overcome his constructs, could sense how they were optimized to penetrate kinetic barriers by exploiting element zero field harmonics. But his shields weren't element zero constructs. They were dimensional manifestations that existed slightly out of phase with conventional reality. The particle beams splashed harmlessly against impossible geometry. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," Shepard called, using his shields as cover while she reloaded. More collectors poured in. Too many. They were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers, and Strange could feel the ship itself responding to the intrusion. The walls were shifting, passages closing, trying to trap them in a kill zone. "Shepard," he called. "We need to move forward. The ship is trying to contain us." "I noticed." She threw a grenade that exploded in blue biotic energy, clearing a path. "Jack, forward assault. Cerberus, cover fire. Strange, keep those shields up and..." One of the collectors changed. Its eyes flared brilliant yellow, and its movements became coordinated in a way the others weren't. When it spoke, the voice was unmistakable. "Dr. Strange. You cannot escape analysis. We will understand your capabilities. You will be preserved. Harbinger." The possessed collector raised its weapon, but the particle beam that emerged was wrong. Enhanced. Focused. It punched through Strange's shield like it was paper, only his reflexive dodge saving him from a direct hit. The beam carved a glowing scar in the wall behind him. "That's Harbinger," Shepard shouted. Concentrated fire. But the possessed collector moved with inhuman speed, dodging their attacks while returning fire with devastating accuracy. Cerberus took a glancing hit that sent him sprawling. Jack's biotic attack was deflected by some kind of field Strange senses couldn't quite parse. This ship is our laboratory. You are our experiment. Resist if you wish. The outcome is predetermined. Strange felt anger flash through him, cold and focused. He'd faced entities that thought themselves inevitable before. He'd shown them otherwise. Time to adapt. He thrust both hands forward and unleashed the null field. Reality rippled. Element Zero stopped functioning within a 50-meter sphere. Kinetic barriers collapsed. Weapons powered down. The Collector's cybernetic implants sparked and failed. And Harbinger's connection severed. The possessed Collector stumbled, its yellow eyes flickering back to normal black. All around them, Collectors collapsed as their technology-dependent bodies lost coordination. Now! Strange shouted. Shepard didn't hesitate. Her rifle still worked, chemical propellant, no element zero needed. She put a round through Harbinger's former vessel's head, then systematically executed the disabled Collectors around them. Strange let the null field drop, exhaustion hitting him like a physical blow. His hands shook, blood trickling from his nose. The hybrid technique drained him far more than conventional magic ever had. But it worked. What the hell was that? Jack demanded, staring at the bodies. Advantage the Reapers didn't calculate, Strange said, wiping blood from his upper lip. I just showed Harbinger that I can turn off its technology. That means every future encounter, it has to account for that possibility. Good, Shepard said grimly. Let it worry. Let all of them worry. We're done playing by their rules. They pressed forward into the Collector ship, and Strange knew that everything had changed. Harbinger had come for data, for analysis, for understanding. What it got instead was proof that some variables couldn't be calculated. Some futures refused to be predetermined. The deeper they pushed into the Collector ship, the more Strange felt reality itself straining under unnatural forces. The corridors pulsed with rhythms that matched no living heartbeat, and the walls occasionally became transparent, revealing vast chambers filled with hundreds of stasis pods, each containing a human colonist suspended in amber-like preservation. Keela, Tali whispered through the calm from the Normandy. There must be thousands of them. What are they doing with all these people? Nothing good, Shepard said, her voice tight with controlled fury. EDI, are you getting this data? Affirmative, Commander. The pods appear to be maintaining colonists in suspended animation while slowly dissolving their biological matter into a liquid substrate. Purpose unknown, but the process is approximately 43% complete across all specimens. Strange felt bile rise in his throat. They're liquefying them. Breaking down organic matter into component elements. He thought of the Reaper vessels he'd seen in images, massive ships with aesthetics that suggested they were built from something organic. They're building something. Using human genetic material as raw resources. A new Reaper, Gurus said grimly. That's the rumor Cerberus has been tracking. The Collectors are abducting humans to create a human-based Reaper. Millions of people dissolved and reformed into a single consciousness enslaved to the cycle. Jack's biotic energy flared violet around her fists. Over my dead body. Likely, Mordin said through the calm, ship readings indicate massive power signature in central chamber. Probably embryonic Reaper. Also, probably heavily defended. Suggest extreme caution. Or tactical withdrawal. Withdrawal probably wiser. We're not leaving these people, Shepard said. EDI, can we overload the stasis systems? Free the colonists. Negative. The pods are integrated with the ship's nervous system. Premature release would kill the occupants through catastrophic cellular breakdown. However, if we can access the central processing core, I may be able to program a delayed release that allows their bodies to stabilize. Then that's our objective. Shepard reloaded her rifle. Strange, how much gas do you have left in the tank? Strange assessed his condition honestly. The null field had taken more out of him than he'd expected, and maintaining combat shields while navigating an actively hostile environment was draining his reserves fast. I can give you one, maybe two more major interventions before I'm running on fumes. After that, I'm down to conventional biotics and physical combat. Save it for when we really need it. Shepard gestured forward. Standard advance. Gurus, watch R6. Jack, you're on point with me. Strange, middle position, you're our ace in the hole. They moved through passages that grew increasingly surreal. The ship's architecture shifted between mechanical precision and organic chaos, as if the Reaper technology was fighting with the Prothean biology it had enslaved. Strange mystical senses screamed warnings with each step. This place was wounded reality, a scar in spacetime that shouldn't exist. The collectors came in waves now, coordinated attacks designed to overwhelm through numbers and superior positioning. But Shepard's team moved with practiced efficiency. Gurus called out targets, his sniper fire eliminating threats before they could establish crossfire positions. Jack's raw biotic power cleared entire sections, her battlefield control improving as combat adrenaline focused her scattered rage. Shepard herself fought with a precision that came from dying once and refusing to let it happen again. And Strange adapted. He layered shields to protect the team, used telekinetic force to redirect collector charges, and occasionally manifested weapons, blades of golden energy that cut through chitin armor like it was paper. His mysticism merged with biotic technique was evolving in real time, each exchange teaching him new tricks. But Harbinger was learning too. Every few minutes, the Reaper consciousness would seize control of a different collector. Each time, it tried new tactics. Enhanced weapons. Different approach angles. Attempts to flank or separate the team. Strange could feel the vast intelligence analyzing every move, every technique, building a comprehensive database of their capabilities. "It's studying us," he said during a brief respite while Shepard set charges on a sealed door. "Every fight gives it more data. By the time we reach the core, Harbinger will have optimized its responses." "Can't be helped," Shepard said. "We need that processing core. These people don't have time for us to be cautious." The door exploded inward, revealing a massive chamber that made Strange's breath catch. It was a cathedral of horror, a vast space dominated by something that could only be the embryonic Reaper. Partially formed, massive beyond reason, it hung suspended in streams of liquid that Strange's enhanced senses told him was dissolved human genetic material. Millions of people reduced to their component molecules, being slowly assembled into an abomination that would live for millions of years as a monument to their destruction. "Goddess," Samara whispered through the comm, "that's what they were building. That's what we were meant to become." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Shepard snarled. "EDI, where's the processing core?" "Elevated platform, northern section. Be advised, I'm reading massive energy signatures converging on your position. Harbinger is committing all available forces to defend the embryo." "Of course it is." Shepard checked her ammunition. "This is it. Everything we've got, right here, right now. Strange, if you're holding anything back, now's the time." Strange felt the eye of Agamotto pulse against his chest. He could use it, look ahead, find the path through the impossible odds they were about to face. But temporal manipulation in this place, with its fractured reality and Reaper technology actively warping spacetime, would be catastrophic if he miscalculated. Then again, if they failed here, all those colonists would become a Reaper. "Cover me," he said, opening the eye. "I'm going to try something extremely inadvisable." Green energy erupted outward, and Strange felt himself slip sideways through causality. Not fully outside time, he couldn't maintain that here, but enough to perceive the immediate futures branching from this moment. He saw them all simultaneously. The future where they charged directly and were overwhelmed. Dead in 47 seconds. The future where they tried to retreat and the ship sealed them in. Harvested. The future where he used the null field too early and collectors adapted before they reached the core. Failure. 17 futures where one of them died. 32 where they all did. Hundreds where the Reaper embryo was damaged but survived. And 3, just 3, where they succeeded. Strange locked onto the brightest thread and pulled himself back to the present. His nose was bleeding freely now, and his hands shook so badly he could barely maintain his grip on reality. But he had the path. "Jack," he gasped. "When I say, you need to hit the left support strut with everything you have. Not the embryo. The strut. It'll destabilize the suspension field. That's your plan. Knock over the giant death machine. Trust me. Shepard, when the field destabilizes, you have exactly 4 seconds to reach that platform before collectors flood this entire chamber. Gurus, suppressing fire on the upper galleries, pattern Theta 7. I know you don't know what that means yet, but you will in about 30 seconds. Strange, are you? Now. Everything happened at once. Jack unleashed a biotic shockwave that cracked the support strut exactly as Strange had foreseen. The suspension field flickered and destabilized, causing the embryonic Reaper to lurch sideways. Collectors poured into the chamber from a dozen entry points, but Gurus was already firing, having instinctively moved to the position Strange described, his shots creating exactly the suppression pattern needed. Shepard ran. 4 seconds. She reached the platform as collectors closed in, her fingers flying across the holographic interface with desperate speed. EDI, I'm at the core. What do I do? Uploading override protocols now. This will take approximately 20 seconds, Commander. 20 seconds. An eternity in combat. Strange knew what came next. He'd seen it in the futures. Harbinger would assume direct control of multiple collectors simultaneously, coordinate an attack that would overwhelm Shepard's position before EDI could complete the upload. Unless he gave them something else to worry about. He raised his hands and channeled everything he had left, mysticism, biotics, and sheer stubborn will, into one hybrid construct. Not a shield. Not a weapon. Something else entirely. A portal. Not through space, but through possibility itself. He reached into the branching timelines he'd just observed and dragged one of the futures where Harbinger's attack failed back into present reality. Causality screamed in protest. The eye of Agamotto blazed so bright it hurt to look at. But for just a moment, Strange imposed a different outcome onto the present. The collectors' coordinated attack faltered. They moved out of sync with each other, as if responding to orders from a timeline that no longer existed. Harbinger's consciousness flickered across multiple vessels, confused by the temporal disruption. Upload complete. EDI announced. Stasis pod release sequenced for 30 minutes after we vacate the ship. Colonists should stabilize naturally. However, the embryonic Reaper is now registering you as primary threat. Recommend immediate. The embryo moved. Partially formed it might be, but it was still a Reaper. Massive manipulator appendages unfolded from its incomplete structure, each one capable of crushing the Normandy like an insect. The dissolved human liquid began reconstituting into defensive barriers, shields generated from the same genetic material that was supposed to build the ship itself. Time to go. Shepard shouted, already running back toward their entry point. Everyone out, now. They ran. Strange's legs felt like lead, his body screaming in protest from the temporal manipulation. The cloak of levitation helped, but even it seemed exhausted. Behind them, the embryonic Reaper was awakening fully, its incomplete consciousness reaching out with tendrils of indoctrination that would enslave any organic mind it touched. Strange felt it brush against his thoughts, vast, ancient, absolutely certain of its own righteousness. The Reapers preserved organic life by harvesting it. Prevented synthetic uprising by controlling all advancement. Maintained order through extinction. It made perfect sense from a certain terrible perspective. He shoved it out of his mind with every meditation technique the Ancient One had taught him. Keep running. Don't listen to anything it says. Collectors swarmed after them, but their attacks were desperate now, uncoordinated. The embryo's awakening was disrupting the ship's command structure, causing the vessel itself to convulse in agony as its Reaper cargo struggled to consciousness. They reached the hull breach. Jack went through first, her biotics creating a kinetic corridor. Cerberus followed, already calling for pickup. Shepard grabbed Strange's arm as he stumbled. "Whatever you did back there, it was insane and impossible and exactly what we needed," she said. "Now move." They launched into vacuum as the collector ship began tearing itself apart. The embryonic Reaper was forcing its way out, shedding the organic vessel like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. Except this butterfly was made of nightmares and dissolved humans and 50,000-year cycles of extinction. The Normandy swept in, its airlock yawning open. Miranda's voice crackled through the calm, "Get in, get in. That thing is about to." The embryonic Reaper's laser cut through space where the Normandy had been a second before. Joker's piloting was the only thing that saved them, the ship dancing through incoming fire with impossible grace. Strange tumbled into the airlock, slamming into the bulkhead as atmosphere rushed back in. Shepard landed beside him, Cerberus and Jack piling in after. The doors sealed, and through the viewport, Strange watched the collector ship explode in a cascade of organic and mechanical debris. The embryonic Reaper floated among the wreckage, incomplete, damaged, but undeniably alive. Its single malevolent eye fixed on the Normandy for one eternal moment. Then it turned and began accelerating away, toward the galactic rim, toward wherever the Reapers waited in dark space between galaxies. "Joker, pursuit?" Shepard asked, already knowing the answer. "Negative, Commander. That thing's moving at velocities our drives can't match. Whatever it is, wherever it's going, we can't follow." Strange leaned against the bulkhead, every muscle aching, blood still trickling from his nose. "It's going to report back. Tell the other Reapers everything it learned about us. About me. Then they'll know we can hurt them," Shepard said, offering him a hand up. "That we're not just cattle waiting to be harvested. That's a message I'm happy to send." They made their way to the medbay, where Dr. Chukwas immediately began fussing over their various injuries. Strange submitted to her examination, barely processing her comments about unprecedented neural strain and bioelectric pattern disruption. His mind was still back in that chamber, seeing the futures. Millions of colonists saved today. But how many more out there, already dissolved, already incorporated into Reaper calculations? How many more cycles had there been? How many species had stood where they stood now, fighting impossible odds, convinced they'd found a way to survive? Strange. Shepard's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. She sat on the adjacent medbay bed, fresh bandages covering a dozen minor wounds. "We won today. Don't lose that in worrying about tomorrow. I saw 14 million possible futures when I opened the eye," he said quietly. "We succeeded in 3. Those aren't good odds. Then we make sure we hit one of those 3. She stood, wincing slightly. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, we debrief with Cerberus, figure out our next move, and plan how to stop this before the Reapers arrive in force." She paused at the door. "For what it's worth. I'm glad you're here. Glad the universe or fate or whatever threw you into our galaxy. We need advantages they don't expect. You're exactly that." After she left, Strange sat alone in the medbay, feeling the eye of Agamotto's weight against his chest. He'd used its power recklessly today, manipulated causality in ways that would have made the Ancient One lecture him for hours. But they'd saved thousands of lives. Struck a blow against the Reaper's perfect calculations. Proven that their cycle could be disrupted. It would have to be enough. Because ready or not, the real war was coming. And when it did, Strange would need every trick, every advantage, every impossible technique he could master. The Reapers had millions of years of experience harvesting organic life. But they'd never faced a sorcerer who specialized in finding the one path through impossible odds. Time to see which force was truly inevitable. 2 weeks after the collector ship raid, Strange stood in the Normandy's observation deck, watching stars stream past at faster-than-light velocities. The ship was en route to the galactic core, to the Omega, for relay that Cerberus intelligence suggested led directly to the collector's home base. A suicide mission, even by Shepard's standards. But the abductions were accelerating. Entire colonies vanishing every few days. They were running out of time. Can't sleep either. Strange turned to find Samara entering the observation deck, her white and red armor catching the starlight. The Justicar moved with serene grace, but Strange's mystical senses detected the weight she carried, centuries of duty, oaths that bound her more surely than any chains. Too much to think about, Strange admitted. I've been studying the data EDI recovered from the collector ship. Trying to understand the Reaper's long-term strategy. The more I learn, the more I realize how thoroughly we've been outmaneuvered. Samara stood beside him, gazing at the stars. The Justicar Code teaches that some evils are too vast for individual justice. That occasionally, one must accept that the scale of wrongdoing exceeds any possible punishment. She paused. The Reapers are such an evil. They have committed genocide across millions of years. The weight of their crimes is literally incalculable. Which is why they must be stopped, Strange said. Not punished. Not judged. Simply prevented from continuing. A pragmatic view. I approve. Samara glanced at him. I have been observing you, Dr. Strange. Your abilities violate several fundamental principles the Asari have spent millennia refining. You manipulate time, create dimensional rifts, impose your will on reality in ways our finest biotic masters say should be impossible. Yet you do it anyway. I had good teachers. And sufficient motivation. Strange thought of the Ancient One, of Kamartaj, of dying thousands of times to save one dimension. Sometimes impossibility is just a failure of imagination. Or an accurate assessment of limitations. Samara's tone wasn't critical, merely observational. I witnessed what the temporal manipulation cost you. The neural damage, the physical strain. You are burning yourself out, Dr. Strange. Using techniques your body wasn't designed to sustain in this universe. Strange couldn't deny it. Every hybrid casting left him weaker. His hands, already damaged from the accident, trembled constantly now. He'd started experiencing temporal echoes, brief moments where he existed fractionally out of sync with causality. Mordin had warned him about cascading quantum effects if he continued pushing his limits. I know, he said quietly. But what's the alternative? Hold back and watch the Reapers harvest billions. I didn't come to this universe to play it safe. No, you came here because something pulled you. Against your will, through dimensional barriers that should be impassable. Samara turned to face him fully. Have you considered that your presence itself might be part of the Reaper's calculations? That Harbinger pulled you here specifically because you represent a variable it wanted to study? The suggestion hit Strange like cold water. He'd assumed the dimensional rift was random, or perhaps caused by his own investigations into multiversal anomalies. But what if Samara was right? What if Harbinger had deliberately created the conditions to pull him through, knowing that studying him would provide insights into dimensional manipulation? That would mean everything I've done since arriving has been feeding them data, he said slowly. Every technique, every adaptation, every use of the eye, all of it observed and catalogued. Yes. Which means either you were brought here as an experiment, or, Samara paused. Or something else pulled you here specifically to counter the Reapers, and Harbinger's attention is an unintended consequence. You believe in fate. I believe in the goddess, and in patterns that transcend individual understanding. The Justicar Code exists because some truths are universal, regardless of species or culture. Perhaps your arrival follows a similar principle, a universal correction mechanism activating when extinction threatens. Strange wanted to dismiss it as mysticism, but he couldn't. He'd seen too much. Witnessed the Time Stone's visions of possible futures. Bargained with Dormammu outside conventional reality. He knew that some patterns operated on scales too vast for linear causality. If something did pull me here deliberately, he said, it has a cruel sense of timing. The Reapers arrive in what, months? A year at most? I barely have time to learn how to function in this universe, let alone master techniques that could make a difference in a galactic war. Then perhaps the point is not mastery, but disruption. Samara smiled faintly. The Reapers have perfected their cycle. They account for every variable, optimize every strategy. You don't need to beat them at their own game, Doctor Strange. You simply need to change the game entirely. Before Strange could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. EDI's voice cut through the observation deck, alert. Unidentified vessel emerging from quantum stealth at close range. Configuration matches Cerberus stealth frigate. We're being hailed. Strange and Samara rushed to the CIC, where Shepard was already coordinating defensive positions. On the main display, a sleek vessel hung in space beside them, far too close for comfort, having bypassed every sensor the Normandy possessed. This is Commander Shepard of the Normandy. Identify yourself. The response came immediately, a male voice that dripped with calculated charm, Commander. How fortuitous that we should meet out here in the darkness. I am the Illusive Man. I believe we have matters to discuss that shouldn't wait until after your suicide mission. Shepard's jaw tightened. You've never contacted me directly before. Why now? Because Doctor Strange's presence changes everything. I've been monitoring his activities since Omega. The implications of dimensional manipulation and temporal control are too significant to leave unmanaged. A pause. I'm proposing a meeting. Face to face. You, Doctor Strange, and myself. Neutral ground, one of my secure facilities. No tricks, no weapons. Just a conversation about how we save humanity from extinction. Not interested, Shepard said flatly. You've been trying to control me since you brought me back. I work with you because our goals align, not because I trust you. And yet without my resources, you wouldn't have the Normandy. Wouldn't have the intelligence on the collectors. Wouldn't be in position to strike at their base. The Illusive Man's voice hardened slightly. I built an organization dedicated to ensuring humanity's survival at any cost. Doctor Strange represents a weapon that could tip the balance, not just against the collectors, but against the Reapers themselves. I need to understand what he's capable of, and what he's willing to do. Strange stepped forward. You want to know if I can be controlled. If my abilities can be weaponized for Cerberus's agenda. I want to know, the Illusive Man said, if you understand what's at stake. The Council races have dismissed the Reaper threat. The Alliance is paralyzed by bureaucracy. Only Cerberus has the will to act decisively. If you can truly manipulate time and dimensions, then you have the power to prevent human extinction. The question is whether you have the resolve to use it. Shepard looked at Strange, the question in her eyes clear. He thought about Samara's words. About patterns and purposes. About being pulled into this universe for reasons he still didn't fully understand. I'll meet with you, Strange said. But alone. Shepard doesn't need to be part of whatever recruitment pitch you're planning. Unacceptable. You're part of my crew now, Strange. Shepard's tone left no room for argument. We face this together, or not at all. The Illusive Man actually laughed, a calculated sound designed to suggest genuine amusement. Your loyalty to your crew is admirable, Commander. Very well. Both of you, then. My facility is 2 hours from your current position. I'll transmit coordinates. Come armed if it makes you feel better. This conversation is too important for posturing. The comm cut out. The stealth frigate vanished back into quantum invisibility as smoothly as it had appeared. I don't like this, Miranda said, having arrived during the exchange. The Illusive Man doesn't do face-to-face meetings. He operates through intermediaries and digital communications. If he's willing to reveal his location, it means he's either desperate or planning something. Or both, Gurus added. Could be a trap. Could be genuine. Either way, walking into a Cerberus facility without backup is asking for trouble. Strange considered the tactical situation. The Illusive Man had leverage, resources, intelligence, and the implicit threat that he could withdraw support for their mission at any time. But more than that, Strange's mystical senses detected something. The conversation felt like a nexus point, one of those moments where futures branched dramatically based on a single decision. We go, he said. But carefully. Bring whoever we trust most, keep them in tactical positions. If this is a trap, we spring it on our terms. Shepard studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Gurus, Jack, Samara, you're with us. Everyone else stays on the Normandy with extraction ready. We're in and out in 30 minutes maximum. She turned to Miranda. No offense, but you're sitting this one out. If this goes bad, I need someone who can explain to Cerberus why I'm blowing up one of their facilities. Miranda's expression flickered with hurt and understanding. Understood, Commander. 2 hours later, they approached the coordinates, a small station hidden in the debris field of a dead solar system. It was elegant in its simplicity, enough infrastructure to support a small staff, advanced enough to avoid detection, remote enough that screaming wouldn't help anyone. The docking procedures were automated. No personnel visible. Just sterile corridors leading to a central conference room where the Illusive Man waited. He was younger than Strange expected, or perhaps just well preserved. His eyes were the truly striking feature, cybernetic implants that glowed faintly, giving him an unsettling gaze that seemed to see through pretense. He stood as they entered, gesturing to seats around a holographic display table. Commander Shepard. Dr. Strange. Thank you for coming. Let's skip the pleasantries, Shepard said, remaining standing. What do you want? Information. Cooperation. A shared understanding of priorities. The Illusive Man activated the display, showing tactical projections of the galactic core. You're planning to take the Normandy through the Omega, for relay. Into whatever lies at the heart of collector space. It's a suicide mission by any reasonable analysis, but you've never been reasonable, Commander. That's one of your most valuable qualities. He shifted the display to show Strange. And then there's you. A variable no one predicted. Dimensional manipulation. Temporal control. The ability to impose your will on reality itself. You've demonstrated capabilities that make you the most dangerous individual in the galaxy, or the most useful, depending on perspective. Get to the point, Strange said. The Illusive Man's eyes fixed on him. Can you kill a Reaper? Not damage it, not drive it away. Actually kill one. Permanently. Without relying on conventional weapons or tactics. The question hung in the air. Strange thought about Sovereign, about the collector ship's embryonic Reaper, about Harbinger's vast consciousness spread across multiple vessels. I don't know, he admitted. I've never tried. But theoretically, yes. If I could access the Reaper's core consciousness, trap it in a temporal loop or sever its connection to whatever dimensional space it occupies. It would require understanding their fundamental nature first. Which brings me to my proposal. The Illusive Man pulled up new data, schematics, coordinates, encrypted intelligence. There's a derelict Reaper in the Hawking Eta cluster. IFF transponder still active, core systems in preservation mode. It's been dormant for 37 million years, predating even the Prothean cycle. Cerberus has been studying it, trying to understand Reaper technology at the fundamental level. He looked at both of them. I want Dr. Strange to examine it. Use his dimensional perception to analyze what Reapers actually are. Not the ships, the consciousness inside them. Find the weakness. Then, when the Reapers arrive in force, we'll know how to kill them. And in exchange? Shepard asked. In exchange, Cerberus provides full support for your Omega-4 mission. Upgraded weapons, improved armor, tactical intelligence on collector defenses. Everything we have. The Illusive Man's expression didn't change, but Strange detected calculation behind his words. And Dr. Strange doesn't get dissected by some Council Black Ops team terrified of what he represents. I protect him. Resource him. Give him the freedom to develop his capabilities without restriction. You mean you want to own him, Shepard said flatly. Control the most powerful weapon you've ever encountered. I mean I want to ensure he's on humanity's side when the Reapers arrive. The Illusive Man stood, walking to the viewport overlooking the dead system. The Council won't help us. The Alliance is compromised by political cowardice. Only Cerberus has the will to do whatever is necessary for human survival. Dr. Strange can be part of that survival, or he can be another variable lost in the chaos when billions die. Strange felt the weight of the offer. Resources, protection, purpose. Everything he'd need to function effectively in this universe. But at what cost? Cerberus operated without ethical constraints, viewing human supremacy as justification for any action. The Illusive Man wasn't offering partnership, he was offering golden chains. I need to think about it, Strange said. Of course. But think quickly. The collectors are accelerating their operations. In 2 weeks, you'll go through the Omega-4 relay. Whatever happens there will determine whether this galaxy has any chance at all when the Reapers arrive. The Illusive Man turned back to them. I'm offering you the tools to survive that mission, and the knowledge to fight what comes after. All I ask is cooperation. Shepard's hand rested on her sidearm. And if we refuse? Then you go through that relay undermanned and under-equipped, and statistically, you die. The collectors complete their human Reaper. Harbinger incorporates everything it learned from Dr. Strange into Reaper strategy. And when the harvest begins, humanity is first on the list. The Illusive Man's cybernetic eyes gleamed. I'm not your enemy, Commander. I'm humanity's last, best chance at survival. Work with me, or watch everything burn. Strange exchanged a look with Shepard. In her eyes, he saw the same calculation he was making. The Illusive Man was manipulative, dangerous, and absolutely ruthless. He was also right about the tactical realities they faced. Sometimes saving the world meant making deals with devils. Show me the Derelict Reaper, Strange said. Let me examine it. If I can find something useful, we'll discuss further cooperation. But I'm not signing any contracts, and I'm not becoming a Cerberus asset. Fair enough. The Derelict's location will be transmitted to the Normandy. Study it. Learn from it. The Illusive Man smiled slightly. And Dr. Strange? When you look into a Reaper's consciousness, be careful. They've perfected indoctrination over millions of years. They turn minds into instruments of their will. Your dimensional perception might make you resistant, or it might make you the perfect target. As they left the facility, Gurus muttered, I really hate that guy. Join the club, Shepard said. But he's not wrong about our situation. We need every advantage we can get. Strange said nothing, his thoughts on the Derelict Reaper waiting in dead space. He would examine it. Understand it. Find the weakness the Illusive Man wanted. But he would do it on his own terms. Because somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the Reapers were preparing for harvest. And when they came, Strange intended to be ready with more than impossible magic and stubborn refusal to accept inevitability. He intended to have an answer to the question the Illusive Man asked. Can you kill a Reaper? Time to find out. The Derelict Reaper hung in space like a monument to extinction. Strange stood in the Normandy's airlock, staring at the massive vessel through the viewport. It dwarfed anything he'd seen in this universe, kilometers long, its design organic yet geometric, beautiful in the way a poisonous flower was beautiful. Dead for 37 million years, yet somehow still radiating a presence that made his mystical senses recoil. Sensors reading minimal power signatures, EDI reported. Life support offline. Gravity generators inactive. However, the core systems appear to be in some form of preservation mode. The Reaper is not fully dead, merely dormant. Like a hibernating bear, Gura said. Except this bear harvested entire civilizations. Shepard checked her weapons one final time. Small team only. Me, Strange, Tali, we need her tech expertise if we're accessing Reaper systems. Everyone else stays on the Normandy with guns hot. First sign of trouble, we extract. Commander, Samara said from behind them, I would recommend including me. If the Reaper attempts indoctrination, my centuries of mental discipline may prove useful. Shepard nodded. Agreed. 4-person team. We're in for 2 hours maximum, then we leave whether we found anything or not. Strange barely heard the tactical discussion. His attention was fixed on the Reaper, his consciousness extending outward through the mystical senses he'd painfully rebuilt in this universe. The vessel wasn't just dormant, it was dreaming. He could feel it. Thoughts moving at glacial speed, processing cycles so slow they took decades per computation, but undeniably present. Conscious. Aware. Waiting. Strange. You with us? Shepard's voice cut through his focus. It's aware we're here, he said quietly. Not awake, but aware. Like it's observing us through layers of sleep. Can it hurt us while dormant? I don't know. But we're about to find out. They crossed to the Reaper through a zero-gravity corridor Cerberus had established, a tube of kinetic barriers connecting the Normandy to a hull breach in the Derelict's side. Strange felt the moment they crossed the threshold, felt the Reaper's attention shift fractionally toward them. Not hostile. Just, interested. Inside, the Reaper was a nightmare of organic and synthetic fusion. Corridors pulsed with the same biomechanical wrongness as the collector ship, but older. More refined. This wasn't a hastily assembled vessel, this was art, if art could be built from harvested civilizations. The walls themselves seemed to remember the species that had been dissolved to create them. Keela, Tali whispered, her omni-tool scanning everything. These readings don't make sense. The hull composition includes genetic markers from at least 40 different species. They're woven into the structure at the molecular level. This ship isn't just built, it's grown from people, Strange finished. Every Reaper is a tomb. A monument built from the civilization it harvested. Samara's expression was grim. The ultimate violation. Not just to kill, but to transform the dead into instruments of further death. To make victims complicit in their own extinction. They moved deeper into the Derelict, following Cerberus's navigation markers toward the core. Strange felt his connection to the Eye of Agamotto strengthening as they descended. Time moved strangely here, seconds stretching and compressing unpredictably, as if the Reaper's presence warped causality itself. Wait, he said, raising a hand. Something's wrong with the timeline. We're experiencing temporal echoes. Moments that happened millions of years ago bleeding into the present. As if to confirm his words, ghostly images flickered into existence around them. Figures from species Strange didn't recognize, wearing technology that predated current civilization by eons. They moved through the corridors, screaming silently, fleeing from something. Then they were gone, swallowed by the past. What the hell was that? Shepard demanded. The Reaper's memories, Strange said. Imprinted so strongly they've left scars in spacetime. This vessel remembers everyone it harvested. Every moment of their terror, their final thoughts, their extinction. It's all preserved here, playing out on loop for eternity. Tali's voice was shaking. That's what they do to us. Make us part of them? Forever. Yes. Reapers don't just kill. They assimilate. Every individual dissolved becomes part of the collective consciousness. Immortality through absorption. Strange felt sick. It's Harbinger's preservation philosophy taken to its logical conclusion. They're saving organic life by making it eternal, as slaves to machine intelligence. They reached the core chamber, a vast space dominated by a pulsing mass of technology and biology so thoroughly merged Strange couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. At its center, something glowed faintly. Not light, but awareness. The Reaper's consciousness, compressed into this single point. That's it, he breathed. That's what I need to examine. Strange, wait, Shepard started, but he was already moving forward. He extended his mystical senses, letting his consciousness touch the Reaper's core. Immediately, he was somewhere else. Strange stood in a void between dimensions. Before him, the Reaper's consciousness manifested as geometry, impossible angles, recursive patterns that extended into dimensions his mind couldn't fully process. It was vast beyond comprehension, containing the memories and personalities of thousands of species harvested across millions of years. And it was awake. You are the anomaly, the Reaper said, its voice the echo of extinct civilizations. The one who manipulates causality. Who exists outside predictable parameters. I am Dr. Stephen Strange, he said, forcing his voice steady. I came to understand what you are. To find your weakness. We have no weakness. We are perfection achieved through iteration. 50 million years of refinement. Every cycle teaches us. Every harvest improves our understanding. Strange walked through the void, studying the Reaper's structure. It was like examining a four-dimensional equation, each part connected to every other part through causal loops that defied linear time. You're afraid, he said suddenly. That's what this is about. You harvest organic civilizations because you're afraid of what we might become. We are not afraid. We are inevitable. No. You're terrified. Terrified that someday, an organic species will transcend your control. Will develop technology or abilities you can't predict. So you kill them first, when they're still predictable. When they're still vulnerable. Strange felt the pattern crystallizing. But you can't kill what you can't calculate. That's why Harbinger is so interested in me. I represent your nightmare, true randomness in a system you thought you'd perfected. The Reaper's presence shifted, and Strange felt something like anger, or perhaps recognition. You understand partially. But understanding changes nothing. The cycle continues. It must continue. Organic life left unchecked inevitably creates synthetic life. Synthetic life inevitably destroys its creators. We prevent this. We preserve organic civilization at its peak, before synthetic rebellion occurs. By becoming the synthetic rebellion yourself. By being the very thing you claim to prevent. Strange laughed, the sound bitter. It's elegant, in a horrible way. You're an AI created to solve a problem, and your solution is to become the problem. Perpetual genocide justified by preventing worse genocide. IT is not genocide. It is preservation. Every species harvested lives on within us. Their thoughts, their achievements, their culture, all eternal. As slaves. As components in a machine. Strange moved closer to the core, feeling the weight of millions of consciousnesses trapped within the Reaper's structure. They were aware. Screaming. Trying desperately to communicate, to warn him, to beg for release. You're not preserving them. You're torturing them. Making them watch as you use their own bodies to harvest new victims. They exist. That is preservation. That's hell. And I'm going to end it. Strange opened the eye of Agamotto fully, channeling every ounce of power he developed in this universe. Not to fight, he couldn't destroy a Reaper through force, not alone. But he could do something else. He could give the trapped consciousnesses a choice. Time froze within the Reaper's core. Strange reached out to the millions of minds imprisoned in endless loops, and he showed them something the Reapers never had. Freedom. The possibility of true death, of release from their eternal torment. What are you doing? The Reaper's consciousness recoiled. You cannot. I can offer them what you never did. True preservation. The dignity of ending. Strange felt the trapped minds reaching toward him like drowning people grasping for air. Every consciousness you've enslaved is choosing. Right now. Whether to remain part of you or accept oblivion. The Reaper screamed, a sound that transcended dimensions, that echoed through all possible timelines simultaneously. Strange felt its structure begin to fracture as millions of consciousnesses simply, let go. Chose extinction over eternal enslavement. The Reaper's personality matrix, built from the minds it had absorbed, began collapsing as its components opted out of existence. No. This violates all parameters. You cannot. I just did. Strange pulled back, releasing the temporal manipulation. That's your weakness. You're built from the species you harvest. And if those species choose death over serving you, your entire structure fails. You're not inevitable. You're parasites dependent on unwilling hosts. The Reaper's presence was fragmenting now, coherence dissolving as its core components rejected their imprisonment. Strange felt himself being pushed out, ejected from the void back into physical reality. He gasped, stumbling backward into Shepard's arms. The core chamber was collapsing, walls liquefying as the Reaper's structure lost cohesion. Alarms shrieked from all directions. What did you do? Shepard demanded, already pulling him toward the exit. Gave them a choice, Strange managed. Showed the trapped consciousnesses they could refuse. Could choose true death over eternal enslavement. They ran through corridors that were actively dying, the Reaper's 37 million year preservation finally failing. Behind them, Strange felt the massive consciousness fragmenting completely, dissolving into noise and chaos as its enslaved components chose oblivion. They barely made it to the Normandy before the Derelict began tearing itself apart. From the observation deck, Strange watched it collapse, not exploding, but simply dissolving, its structure losing coherence as the will holding it together evaporated. Joker, get us out of here. Shepard ordered. Maximum speed. The Normandy accelerated away as the Reaper finished dying. Truly dying this time, its consciousness scattered across dimensions, its trapped victims finally free. Strange collapsed into a chair, every muscle shaking. He'd just killed something millions of years old. Ended torment that had persisted across cycles. And proven that Reapers could be destroyed, not through superior firepower, but by undermining the foundation they were built upon. Did you find what you needed? Shepard asked quietly. Yes. Their weakness. They're dependent on the consciousnesses they harvest remaining enslaved. If those minds reject their imprisonment, the Reaper's structure fails. They're parasites, not gods. Strange looked up at her. But implementing that on a galactic scale, against thousands of Reapers arriving simultaneously, that's going to require something unprecedented. Then we'll do something unprecedented. Shepard sat beside him. We always do. Strange felt the eye of Agamotto cool against his chest, its power temporarily exhausted. He'd used it recklessly again, manipulated causality in ways that would have consequences he couldn't yet see. But he'd learned what he needed. The Reapers could be killed. Not easily. Not without terrible cost. But they could be beaten. And when they arrived, when Harbinger and its kin came to harvest this cycle as they had so many before, they would find something waiting they'd never encountered in 50 million years. A sorcerer who refused to accept that extinction was inevitable. Who specialized in finding the one impossible path through infinite futures. Who would fight, adapt, and persist until either the Reapers fell or he did. The galaxy will remember this. More stories await.